It is 6 a.m. in the Mile High City. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights, hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Congratulations. Alarm's going off. You're waking up in the greatest country in history. We're off and running. We got a whole show planned for you of engaging content, critical discussions, but most importantly, your phone calls and texts, because this is where Denver's voice is heard loud and clear. So grab a cup of coffee, Denver. Let's dive into the issues that matter most to you right here, right now. Another school shooting, this time in Madison, Wisconsin. We'll be discussing that. You know, one thing I noticed, lots of calls for gun control after the school shooting. Not so many calls for gun control after the CEO shooting. Interesting. What do we need to do to stop these? And does it seem like it's happening more and more at Christian schools? What is up with all that? We'll talk about that. We're going to talk about bounties for illegal immigrants. Now, this was a comment on yesterday's discussion, and lo and behold, somebody's actually introduced a law to provide these. Should there be bounties for American citizens that turn in illegal immigrants? Yeah. Also,
I saw him talking about it. I'm surprised that he pitched it. I'm surprised.
Yeah.
Lawmakers pitch it. That's going to be a fun conversation.
Want to hear from you on that. Growing transgender lawsuits. Also, first poll coming out on the Democrats for governor here in Colorado. Jenna Griswold is actually doing quite well in that poll. You'll never believe it. So we'll talk about who may lead the state following Jared Polis. Mark Hillman's going to join us a little bit later in the show. So absolutely a lot to talk about. But Bill, I got a burr under my saddle.
Yeah, what
a lady like to say.
Yeah. So
this is going to be a spoiler alert. If you haven't watched the series finale, and I say that series because there's talk that it may be a season finale, but yeah, I think it's a series finale of Yellowstone.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because it didn't do as
turn
well
off the
this
phone.
summer.
Turn off the radio. Turn it down if you don't watch it. If that's something you want to watch. I'm just giving you a fair warning. But even if you haven't watched the whole series, I'm not going to get into the details on this, but this is the burr under my saddle. How is it that these writers can do such great, fantastic jobs and then screw up the ending? So bad. I remember watching Lost, getting so into Lost.
Oh, yeah.
And then that's the Office did pretty well when it wrapped up, but I heard Game of Thrones was terrible.
That was a mess at the end.
Never got into that one. But Yellowstone series finale was just awful. Yeah. Terrible.
Recently, Quentin Tarantino, filmmaker, was talking about this, and he talked about the difference that he sees between TV and movies at this point. And he said the TV writers and these long, great, epic TV shows are fantastic. He said, but there's no emotional payoff. You never get this really good emotional payoff like you do in the movies. And he
That's a great point.
And he talked about Yellowstone. He goes, Yellowstone sucked me in. He said, Quentin Tarantino said, loves Kevin Costner. He thought the writing was fantastic. Yes. He said, but 20 minutes after I finished watching it, I couldn't tell you what it was about because there's no real heavy emotional payout. He said, but I can go back 30 or 40 years to Western movies I've seen. I can still tell you certain scenes inside that movie, only sitting in the theater once.
Yeah.
He said that doesn't have the same emotional weight, and you don't have the payoff of the characters, and the story arcs aren't written to tell a complete story at times. And he said, so you never really get this emotional payoff inside of TV shows like you do in really good movies. And he said, that's the problem right now in TV shows.
That is spot on. That is spot on. And you put all this investment into it.
Yes.
You follow all the characters, you get into it. It's great writing. And then they try to sum it up and it just becomes so, there are scenes in that you're like, what, why are we spending 10 minutes at a concert, for instance?
Yeah. And
they just went to a concert for 10 minutes of a series finale.
Yeah, and it doesn't move the story forward.
No.
There's nothing that is bringing you to this conclusion. Because if you think about Tarantino's writing, some of the ways that he stacks it, he comes through, and there are certain things that happen, and especially you get into that last third, and things start stacking on top of each other that all pay off at the end. In fact, saw online yesterday that streaming one of his undiscovered classics that kids are going back and they're finally discovering one of his best written films that flies under the radar, Raising Arizona. Fantastic movie.
Wow, I've never even heard of it.
Christian Slater, Patricia Arquette.
Really?
Wonderful movie. Wonderful movie. Has just the right amount of character development, just the right amount of violence, just the right amount of humor. It is a really it's an undiscovered classic. And I want to say that the director is the guy that did the original Top Gun. So he knows what he's doing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a really, really good movie out there, but there's these emotional payoffs as far as what's going to happen with the characters.
Here's where it all drops off. And you generally, if you know the general story arc of what Yellowstone was, this will blow your mind. Okay. So the entire series is about a family defending a ranch.
Yeah.
Right. Like literally going to the mat, wars in order to defend this ranch. And then at the end, they just give it away.
What?
No,
oh,
just give it away. But here's the real problem. Okay, so at the very end, like the last 5 minutes, in order to save it from developers, which is the big thing, they just give it to Indians. Jeez. So at the very end, the Indians are just taking down everything. They're it ends with them just taking off like the Yellowstone signs and all that stuff, and it now becomes basically a national park.
Jeez.
Okay, so now that you know that, Harrison Ford has an entire series, right, called 1923 or something. That's just one of these spinoffs where he's going to lay down his life to defend the ranch.
Yeah.
So now that you know that, like, this is where it all ends. Does it seem all that compelling anymore?
Yeah.
That Harrison Ford's about to lay down his life to defend the ranch when they just give it away?
No, not at all. It would be like in The Lion King, where they have that with Simba and Mufasa, and the whole idea that son, someday all of this
will be yours.
Will be yours.
Yes.
And then and then Simba leaves and is like, I ain't going back. And just it doesn't come back. He hangs out with Timon and Pumbaa and just has a whole nother life. Doesn't do anything else and doesn't care what happens back there. You're like, why did we go through this?
Yeah, like they all end up in small little ranches at the end. They just move on. And it was like, so you're sitting there going, we know that this finally, all of the drama, all of the effort, all of the bloodshed ends up with it becoming a national park and handed to the Indians.
Yeah.
And then they're like, 1923, Harrison Ford lays down his life to defend his family's honor. And you're like, for what? So what? So anyways, terribly disappointed. I don't know how these writers get it so right all the time and then just blow it with the ending. By the way, there's a really strong anti-Christian element through the whole thing. It's like Taylor Sheridan has Taylor Sheridan really has something out for Catholics or something like that. Let's check in on news and comment with Blake Olson. Good morning, Blake.
Hakuna Matata.
Yeah, there you go.
Good morning, guys. 26 and cloudy in Denver, expecting a high of 52 today. The 710 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story.
And I'm asking Joe Biden to stop his people from giving it away.
DJT says Mexico and Canada are on notice over the border crisis. 47 criticized the corrupt Joe regime over reports the commies are auctioning off large portions of the border wall.
We ordered an additional 200 miles of wall. It's very expensive. And now it's about double the price of what it would have been 6 years ago. The administration is trying to sell it for 5 cents on the dollar, knowing that we're getting ready to put it up. And what they're doing is really an act. It's almost a criminal act. If we don't have it, we're going to have to rebuild it, and it'll cost double what it cost years ago, and that's hundreds of millions of dollars, because you're talking about, as you see, they're trying to sell it for 5 cents on the dollar, but we'll spend hundreds of millions of dollars more on building the same wall that we already have.
Trump touched on several subjects in a presser on Monday, adding he's spoken to Israeli leader Netanyahu, and Trump once again promised all hell will break loose if Hamas doesn't release the hostages before he takes office. DJT said that he's a big believer in the polio vaccine, speaking to reports that Health and Human Services nominee RFK Jr. wants to revoke its approval. The Denver school system is trying to reassure families ahead of a possible immigration crackdown by the incoming DJT administration. DPS issued a statement Friday saying the district is committed to doing everything possible to protect the community from unlawful federal overreach. Current policies bar federal immigration law enforcement activities on DPS property, and the district plans to offer education to all students regardless of immigration status. The statement was signed by Superintendent Alex Marrero and all 7 members of the Denver School Board. Police say the shooter who opened fire at a private K-12 school in Madison, Wisconsin on Monday is being identified as a 15-year-old girl. A teacher and a student at Abundant Life Christian School were killed, and it appears the shooter died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. At least 6 people were wounded. Members of the House Intelligence Committee are expected to receive a classified briefing today over all the recent drone activity in the Northeast. Reps from the FBI, CIA, and National Intelligence Agency will be in attendance. DJT on the drones.
Our military knows where they took off from. If it's a garage, they can go right into that garage. They know where it came from and where it went. And for some reason, they don't want to comment. And I think they'd be better off saying what it is. Our military knows and our president knows. And for some reason, they want to keep people in suspense. I can't imagine it's the enemy, because if it was the enemy, they'd blast it out.
A Manhattan grand jury could return a murder indictment this week against the man accused of killing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. The indictment would then trigger Governor Kathy Hochul to issue a warrant to extradite murder suspect Luigi Mangione to New York from Pennsylvania, where he has been since his arrest there a week ago at the McDonald's. News brought to you by Lair Fireplace and Patio, Denver's premier source for everything fireplace, patio, and grills. Locally owned and operated since 1954. Online at lairfireplacepatio.com. Nuggets over the Kings. Avs lose to the Canucks. It's 23 in Parker, 24 in Lakewood, 26 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue on Tuesday morning. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
A Pacific cold front will be racing through the region today. The impacts on Denver will be minimal, however. The high country will see some snow today and into the evening, but Denver and the Front Range will generally be partly to mostly cloudy. Highs upper 40s and low 50s, becoming windy this afternoon, and you may feel it turning a bit colder by late afternoon and evening, and lows tonight in the lower to middle 20s. Partly cloudy and dry with highs in the 50s Wednesday through Friday, with overnight lows 20s and 30s. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. If you're like me, you see these headlines and gosh, it gets you. You got kids in school. This from Fox. Madison, Wisconsin school leaves 2 dead, 6 injured. Juvenile suspect is dead. This was crazy. Police said a second grader called 911. What? A second grader called 911. Police identified the shooter, who they said opened fire inside a private Christian school in Madison, Wisconsin, killing a teacher, a teen student, injuring 6 others on Monday. Madison police chief said that 15-year-old Natalie Rupnow, who goes by Samantha, opened fire inside Abundant Life Christian School. Barnes said the shooting took place during study hall with multiple grades in the room. Police said evidence suggests the shooter died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Barnes added officials are speaking with Rupnow's father, who is said to be cooperating with police. Barnes said a second grade student called 911 to report the shooting. What the heck? How do you? So first of all, kudos to the second grader. That's incredible. That's like what, 8, 9 years old?
Yeah.
Made the phone call at 10:57 a.m. A second grader called 911 to report the shooting had occurred. But then, what the hell is a second grader having to do that?
Unfortunately, because the second grader has to go through school shooting drills and has done that her entire life. And so, yes, this is what we have in our society.
But where's the adults? I guess I'm asking.
Probably, I don't know.
Trying to stop, maybe.
Maybe but again, that may be just the first call they got, and maybe the first. And again, I don't know how the second grader. I don't know if the second grader had a cell phone or what it was.
Yeah, but, right.
I would assume that the second grader might have been in and around the study hall, because they said it was multiple grades. And so if the teachers were there trying to deal with something, then yeah, it would be the student would be the first one to respond. But that is something that we should really hold on to for a moment and think about. The idea that we have second graders calling to report school shootings. This is what we are asking 8, 9-year-olds to do in our society. We have kids at that age that are taking trauma, life-saving care, so that they can help friends when they're shot at school, so they know how to stop massive bleeding. Yes, it's where we are.
What becomes the response to this? Because I don't understand how a 15-year-old has a gun. That is right. There's no legal. They've already broken all the laws. A 15-year-old can't have a gun.
Yeah,
and a 15-year-old got a gun.
Yeah, but so probably from family or friends.
What's a law that could be written that would stop this, other than taking away the Second Amendment, which isn't going to happen?
Here's the thing: there are a lot of things that we could do, but because we view the Second Amendment as the Second Commandment, not the Second Amendment, there's not a lot of things that we are going to do.
But this was a handgun.
It doesn't matter.
So at this point, you'd have to just get rid of basically any firearm.
No, not at all. No. You'd have to deal with in my opinion, you'd have to deal with the firearm in a different way than we deal with it now. It's a difficult place to come to as our society, because we talked about it a little bit before. I don't think we really care anymore. I have a hard time spending a lot of emotional effort, because we seem to have accepted this as reality, that this is just something that America can't do anything about. So this is just the price of admission. This is your cover charge.
Why not harden the schools? Like, that seems to me.
Why do you think the hardening the schools will work?
So a few reasons. And when we talk about hardening, we're talking about structural changes,
like what
that can be made to protect the students in schools.
Like what?
There's lots of different angles you can go on this. First, curved hallways is an example. Lockdowns, checking students for guns. Also, my opinion, arming teachers. I think that is one of the clearest things that we should be doing right now.
Why?
Because one, it's a direct response, right? What stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And typically that good guy's police. And so you have to wait, right? You have to call 911 and you have to wait for police to show up, because they're the good guy with the gun. if somebody on campus, so in this case, this school had no resource officer. That's been reported.
Yeah.
Right. So you had no good guy with a gun anywhere near. So the bad guy with a gun, or the bad girl in this case, which is just bizarre, the idea that girls are now doing this. It was mostly dudes when I was growing up that was doing this. But a school resource officer or any good person with a gun is going to shorten the response time and likely save lives. I did some training at one point with a congressional delegation in Las Vegas, and we did an active shooter training. Because if you go back to Columbine, one of the problems with Columbine is they all thought that it was like traditional hostage taking.
Yeah.
So they're going to take a bunch of people hostage. We're going to negotiate. They're going to get what they want. They're going to let people out. Wrong. Now the thinking in the training, which I've done with Las Vegas Police Department, is pressure on, pressure on, pressure on. Because these folks fold like a cheap suit the minute that there's any type of pressure put on them by somebody with a gun. You saw it in the Las Vegas, or not the Las Vegas, the Nashville shooting, right? Where the cops went in and they were able to put that girl down very quickly. So what the cops do is they just run at the gunfire. They just go until you.
I know that's a train, not all the time, because Uvalde wasn't that at all.
Oh, so, and that was a disaster.
Yeah. So there are examples of that not happening, even with the people that
where
are
it's a failure.
Yeah.
And that was a failure. But when it works right, it's because they put pressure on. So when we're talking about hardening schools, I think there's some structural changes that can be done. But the primary thing, in my opinion, is you got to have a good guy putting pressure on the bad guy. And the good guy has to have a gun. So whether it's a law enforcement resource officer or an armed teacher, and those teachers need to be trained. And there's schools out there where the kids or the teachers go through training. There's Faster with Lauren Carno. She does that. Abel Shepard does that, where they actually train teachers. They go through a certification program. You don't really know which teachers are carrying, but there's a teacher somewhere in the school that's carrying a weapon. It's gone through training certification, and you gotta shorten that response time and put lead on the bad guy as quickly as possible. That is how you stop something.
Here's the thing. If you would have had an armed teacher at the STEM school shooting, if that teacher is more than 2 classrooms away, those kids still die. This kid or kid still dies. If that teacher if the teacher is somewhere not in the study hall, when this child pulls the gun, those kids and teachers still die. It doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't prevent it from happening. And the other part is this: with the teachers, we spend in America a lot of time denigrating teachers. They're the ones that are doing the indoctrination for all the trans stuff. Mm-hmm. They're the woke DEI people. They're the horrible people that are teaching stuff. And you talk all the time about getting kids out of government-run schools. Yes. Yet now they're supposed to act like SEAL Team 6. Now they're supposed to be
not all of them, but some. Sure.
But now they're supposed to be heroes, and you're supposed to get them like SEAL Team 6. And they're supposed to be highly trained individuals,
right,
able to execute something like this. At the same time, they also need to be grading papers and also taking money out of their pocket in order to pay for school supplies.
So I don't understand what the solution is. Then. If the perfect is the enemy of the good in your scenario,
it's not perfect. The idea is for me it's expectations that are not based on reality. And the idea is the group of people that I hear all the time complaining about how much teachers suck, how much teachers are horrible people, how much teachers can't do their job. They obviously have to be the first responders, the first line of defense when kids' lives are on the line. You don't trust them to do anything else, but you're going to trust them to do this? And this is the question I've got is,
sure,
how many times have you asked your teacher in the parent-teacher conference if they're okay killing your child? Ever discuss that? Because that's what you're asking the teachers to do. You're asking the teachers to be able to kill the children in their classroom.
If somebody with a gun is shooting kids in the classroom, of course, why not?
Yeah. So what if it's your kid? You need to ask.
If my kids,
yes,
have taken guns and are killing people, yes, of course. Yes.
So that's what I'm saying is
why not?
That's what I'm saying is have the discussion with your teacher if they're okay killing your child. Because that's where you're going with this discussion. Am I okay with the teachers killing the kids inside the classroom and inside the school? And understand they may miss. That teacher, when responding, Bill, may kill someone that is innocent. I feel like
you can flip this exactly on the other side and go, Are you okay with a student having to lay down his or her life like Kendra Castillo because nobody else in the vicinity is armed?
Here's the thing.
So if we're gonna ask teachers and say, teachers, are you okay killing kids?
Yeah.
Then you have to be willing to say, are you okay asking students to give up their lives because
we already do.
Nobody around there is armed to stop these guys.
But we already do that. That's part of the training for the kids in school. We already are teaching them that.
Training them to give up their lives?
Yes. Remember, part of the idea when they're being trained at one point is if someone's coming through that room to do exactly what Kendrick did is to rush them. That's part of what the kids are taught to do. That's giving up their life. And you're okay with that? No, I'm not okay with it. But the issue is we're already doing it. The issue is this is a much larger problem that we have inside of our society that we are not willing to deal with, because the answer is harden the schools. And that's not going to stop anything. And one thing is this.
It's not going to stop anything.
No, and the reason
anything.
No, and here's part of it. One is this. One, we're not going to harden the schools because we're not going to have the tax money. We're not going to tax ourselves in order to redo all the schools, because that would be tear down the schools and rebuild them. That's not going to happen. The other problem with hardening the schools is the entrances and exits. You have some issues with getting people out in emergencies, and you can't have only 1 or 2 exits and entrances to get in and out of the school. Can't happen. It just doesn't work based on OSHA regulations. And imagine you have several hundred kids in a school and you've got 2 exits. That's ridiculous. It's not going to work. Also, how long do you want to take to have your kid enter the school? If you got 300 or 400 kids in a school and you're going to metal detector every one of them, that's worse than going through a Broncos game. So that's the other problem that we don't think about this. So that's the other problem.
But I don't hear a solution.
Yeah.
Other than, I mean, this was a handgun. This is not an assault rifle. What is the law that needs to be passed?
No, the solution is how we deal with guns in our country. We have to change the regulations and requirements to be a firearm owner. It's the only thing that's going to change this, in my opinion. It's the only thing that will change.
And what is that? What are the changes?
I would have a lot more changes. I would go towards more the idea of what you see in other countries. Japan has a decent model. Israel has a decent model. There's some other ones as far as Europe, but it goes into much stronger licensing, training, and evaluation of the gun owner. Yes, that's the direction.
So you want the government to come up with a system to license, train gun owners?
Yeah. We do it for cars, and people always talk about how we run.
But that's not in the Constitution. It's not a right protected in the Constitution.
But guess what? It's not the Second Commandment. It's an amendment. It was added afterwards.
Right.
And it's not universal. There are restrictions on it. It's inside the Second Amendment. It has self-evident restrictions inside of it. It's not universal, despite what the Supreme Court says. They can rule that it is legally right now, but how it's written, it doesn't. And that's not what our founding fathers wrote. Founding fathers, it's a very elegantly written clause. It has 2 clauses, an independent and dependent clause. It's very elegant. It's my favorite amendment because it is so simplistic.
Your solution to this shooter in Wisconsin is to take away the Second Amendment rights of Joe Smith in Colorado.
No, I didn't say that. How is licensing and testing and stuff taking away anybody's Second Amendment right? You can still own a gun. How's that taking away anybody's right? Everyone, you still have the right. You just got to get through the requirements.
So
it's fine.
How about free speech rights? Should there be a license for free speech?
We have a license for broadcasting here. So yes, there are some ideas about speech being licensed and regulated. I'm talking about the average person. We have a license.
The average person, in order to practice their free speech rights, has to go get a license for it?
No. But again, you have to tell me.
The person who wants to practice their Second Amendment right has to go get a license for it.
Free speech is different than Second Amendment. Free speech, the right of free speech is constraints on speech based on government, not based on anybody else. Corporations, anybody else can put restrictions on speech all the time.
Yes. But the individual.
But we somehow look as, and the individual has a right to free speech. The individual can go out there and
the
say
individual has a right
to
to arm themselves.
Yes, but we can have requirements as far as what you have to do, and we have requirements based on free speech as well. You don't get to send a letter to the Denver Post. They don't have to print it. If someone calls the radio station here, we don't have to put them on.
But you don't have to get a license to practice your free speech.
In some ways, you have to get some.
But your own individual free speech rights is not based upon a government license.
Yeah, but we do have marriage licenses and things. I'm talking
I'm talking about marriage. I'm talking about speech. I'm talking about constitutionally protected rights. So it sounds like to me that the only thing.
Hang on, let me talk to the phones.
We're getting phones. Billy and I are getting going on this one. What's the response? I'll open it up to the phone lines. Give us a call. Is addressing these school shootings, does it need to be a Second Amendment restriction, stronger licensing on gun ownership, or does it need to be the hardening of schools, the protection of Second Amendment rights, and quicker response times, confrontations to these shooters? Give me a call. Would love to hear from you. 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line, 720-819-5115, 720-819-5115. We'll continue as the phones are starting to light up. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
At this hour, I'm Christina Owayo in Dallas, and here are your top stories. Florida State Senator Randy Fine is proposing a bill that would ban political flags from being displayed in government buildings. The bill, if passed, would prohibit flags that push political messages such as Black Lives Matter, transgender pride flags, Palestinian flags, and others. The legislation states that a, quote, current or retired member of the United States Armed Forces or the National Guard would be allowed to use reasonable force to make sure that American flags displayed in government buildings are not damaged. Senator Fine saying the first flag that should be flown in a government building is the American flag, and that flags that promote Muslim terror or the mutilation of children have no place in taxpayer-funded buildings, whether that government building is our state capitol or a public school classroom. Last week, Senator Fine filed a bill to revoke in-state college tuition rates for illegal migrants. 2 of the 3 women who were found shot to death in a Columbus, Ohio home have been identified by our investigative team. Tiffany Parrish, Sierra Muse, and a 3rd woman were found in the Southside home over the weekend. The grisly discovery sparked officials to launch a homicide investigation. Police have confirmed that all 3 women were shot. The incident was originally reported as a medical event after a friend of the victims went to the home to check on the girls, then called 911. In Dallas, Christina Owayo, Salem News Channel.
schools, lock them down if we need to, or is it a Second Amendment issue? This is the price we pay in this country, and we need to do better licensing of gun ownership. Want to go to the phone lines and text messages. By the way, this is getting real hot here. We do have one open line if you want to jump in, 303-696-1971. Let's go to Brian in Arvada. Good morning, Brian. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Hey, guys, another sad morning. I've got 2 kids in high school, so I feel for any parent or, that the teacher that passed away as well.
Yeah.
We need a comprehensive approach. And it's common sense in one way, where you don't take a gun to the airport. Why? You don't take a gun into the Capitol. Why? You don't take a gun into a courtroom. Why? Metal detector. There's a metal detector and a security guard standing there waiting for you with one entry point. You can't sneak in around the courthouse and go in a back door and take out a judge or and one of your enemies who's up for trial. So we can protect, congressmen. We can protect those people simply with metal detector and an armed guard. 144,000.
Brian, I agree with you. We protect what we love with guns. We protect our money with armed security guards. We protect our judicial system. We protect our political leaders. We protect our sports figures with guns. And yet arming teachers or having resource officers in schools is a problem. But go ahead, please.
Yeah, you can't go to a Rockies game.
Right.
You don't go to a Rockies game with a gun, metal detector. So it wouldn't be that. I mean, how much billions and trillions of dollars we send outside this country to Ukraine? 144,000 schools in this country. We can afford to put a part-time retired military or ex-police officer or a current police officer in that school with a metal detector and one secure entry point during time of school. I mean, it's common sense. The other part of this is mental health. And I have to agree with Billy a little bit here. We can't be selling guns to people that are crazy. And if we know they're crazy, a background check doesn't check your mental health. And, short story, and I don't know if this fits in, but I got my concealed carry years ago when Obama took office. That was the craze. You better get your gun, whatever.
Right.
I went through all the classes, and then I let it lapse. I went to get it again under Polis. And the questionnaire now has, have you been treated for depression in the last 10 years? So that is now on the.
Do you think,
on the Jefferson
that should
County.
be restrictive, though? Do you think somebody that went to a counselor because they're going through a divorce shouldn't be able to own a gun?
No, and that was my hesitancy, is because I actually did see a counselor for some personal issues I was having. I was going through a tough patch in my life about 5 or 7 years ago. I got the help I needed. I had to call my medical care physician and ask him, what did you clinically diagnose me as? Because I can't fill out this questionnaire false. Right. But then I'm thinking, isn't my HIPAA a private thing? So are they medical records? So I don't even know why that question's there, and if it's even constitutional, but it is on the Colorado concealed carry for Jefferson County. I know that. So, yeah. But we do need to take a look at mental health. But how do you do that? Because you don't want the people who want to take away your guns be the people who regulate who has guns.
Yeah. Brian, I appreciate the call. Thanks so much.
Thanks for the call. I understand what he's saying about the schools and hardening the schools, but we can't have only one entry and exit point inside of a school. You can't get kids in a reasonable amount of time. How long do you want to have them standing around outside?
Yeah.
And if the person's going to bring a gun and go to school shooting, wow, we have a whole bunch of targets milling around right in front of a school. That is an open opportunity. You're going to gather all the kids together and make them easier to shoot. That is just dumb. And the other part is this. What do we do when we're going to concerts and we're going to the Broncos games, the Rockies games? Yeah, there are metal detectors. But it's not just one point entrance, because they know they can't get people in and out efficiently with only one entrance.
Yeah.
It can't be one entrance, and you can't do it based on OSHA regulations. If you harden the schools and everything I hear is control the points of access, we have fewer access. If there is a fire in that school or something happens, you can't get kids out. And what they're going to do is they're going to crush each other trying to get through those doors.
That's one way in. But for instance, in some of these places where doors were just like left wide open, I think that's what happened in Uvalde, didn't it?
Yeah, that was
where the guy just walked right in the side door.
Yeah, and we know that the shooting in the movie theater in Aurora.
Propped open the door.
Yeah. So the idea of only having one entrance and exit doesn't work because it's not safe. You can't get through regulations, and it's not fixed. It's not usable based on getting people in and out of a school functionally. That's just not how things work. Imagine if everybody in your office showed up at the same time and you had one door to get through and everybody had to be scanned. Same thing. Wouldn't happen. You wouldn't be able to get into your office in time.
I guess my response, though, is so with churches, you don't have that happen, but you have armed volunteer guards at most churches. Maybe if you don't attend church regularly, you don't know this, but most churches have some form of armed guard, whether it's a police officer at the front or armed volunteer ushers, maybe police officers off duty that are attending church and that type of thing. And so when somebody, you guys remember that video of the guy that started shooting in a church, he got two shots off before someone put him down. Mm-hmm. There you had somebody armed very quickly responding because they were in the room.
Yeah.
Let's do we have time? You want to go to the phones with Kyle, or you want to?
Oh, let's do a break. Well, shoot. Yeah, let's go to Kyle. Let's go to Kyle.
Okay, let's go. We'll go quickly. Kyle, good morning. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Hey, how you doing today, gentlemen?
Good. How are you?
Good. I just wasn't sure if you guys were aware of this, but we do have armed teachers at many schools in Colorado.
Yeah.
So I know that our school with my children, we have armed faculty, and they post signs to all the entrances, letting everybody know that we do have armed faculty at the school before anybody even tries to come inside.
Yeah. Yeah, and I appreciate that. And I like the fact that there are school districts that opt into that there's a form of training that the teachers have to go through. And as a parent, from my perspective, feels great to know that there is a good guy, well-armed and trained nearby to help in case something happens in a school. So, Kyle, I appreciate you bringing that up. All right, Kyle's line will be open. Continue the conversation if you like. Give us a call, 303-696-1971. Another school shooting in America. Are we just getting used to this? Is there something we can do to address this? And does it need to be Second Amendment or school hardening or maybe both?
I may refer to the Onion article they post after each and every one of these. Nothing we can do, says the country where this only happens. The only country where this happens. It says there's nothing that can be done, but it's only one country, only one society that has this happen regularly. And yet we stand here and say there aren't solutions. Okay. We just don't want to. We just don't want to confront them. We just don't want to be honest about what's going on. We just don't have the temerity nor the testicular fortitude to make the changes that need to be done. Doesn't happen anywhere else, but it happens here. And we stand here and wring our hands and say, we don't know what to do. This is our fault. 110%.
Join the conversation. We'd like to have you. 303-696-1971 or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line 720-819-5115. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
Yeah, those were.
Okay, you're
Welcome
on.
back to the Jeff and Bill Show.
I'm having new studio problems. There's
We're
not
in
enough room and stuff all over the place.
some updates done to the regular studio.
Yeah.
So we are in the studio down the hall.
Yes.
But
I'm trying to figure out if I have everything.
important conversation, deep conversation, lots of emotions. We're going to continue that because we're getting phone calls. But we gotta give the people what they want. And when Billy and I go out, this is the one thing we always hear.
It is.
We love you, cheers the news. So let's give it to him, Bill.
All righty, here we go. It is time for everybody's favorite radio news game show. This is going to be a mess today. It is You Choose the News. I have scoured the interwebs for mere moments to find dumb stories about us humans and then given them even more ridiculous headlines so we can play this fake radio news game. I've got right over here on another file, and just so you know, it didn't even print correctly. So this is going to be an extra challenging You Choose the News. And as always, remember, nobody in charge has any idea we're doing this. So please keep this our little secret. Okay, so Blake Olson joining us from the newsroom, as long as I can bring up his microphone properly. And let's see what happens. Here we go. Oh, I cannot read these things. Here we go. It printed in one long line. Normally I print them out as different stories, but I've just got one long run-on series of paragraphs this morning. So this is going to be a lot of fun. Here are what I think our stories are. Headline number 1, putting the fun in funeral. Headline number 2, ancient to-do list. Headline number 3, enterprising problem. And headline number 4, large-headed people. Mr. Hunt.
Start with large-headed people.
Yeah, large-headed people. This comes to us from Cincinnati. The science hippies have introduced what they may believe is a new ancient human species. They're saying they're large-headed people believed to have lived in Eastern Asia over 100,000 years ago. It's important because they show some unique traits of human development, mostly our giant noggins. They have really, really big brains, much closer to what we have versus what they have from Neanderthals and other Denisovians and Homo erectus. So they're closer to modern humans, but they say they're an interesting conglomeration. They seem to have come out of some of the branches of those parts of our family tree, those characteristics. For decades, they were just kind of an ignored part of it. And lately, science said, hey, they got bigger brains than all the rest of the people in these classifications. This is probably a different form of human. So now they're new. Yeah.
Different form of our alien fathers and mothers, right?
Yes.
Coming down with their big brains.
Exactly. In order to fix everything. All righty. So Blake Olson in the newsroom, putting the fun in funeral, ancient to-do list, or enterprising problem.
Let's go with putting the fun in funeral.
Yes, you got to put the fun back in funeral. Here we are in Columbus, Ohio. The Evergreen Funeral Cremation and Reception is set to open next year with a brand new twist on your funeral preparations. They're going to have a bar.
No.
Yes. They have applied for a liquor license, and they're saying they want to stop having funeral services being so quiet and so, reserved. They think that understand this is more of a celebration of life. So they want to be
people who want that.
less of a depression type of an idea and more of a celebration. Hey, they have, shed our earthly bonds. They don't have to worry about anything that we do anymore. And now they're with our Lord. That's time for celebration. Stop crying. So
I'm surprised that hasn't happened earlier.
Yeah, I know.
yeah, exactly.
Alcohol everywhere.
Exactly.
Right.
All righty. Jeff, your final choice, sir. We have got either the ancient to-do list or enterprising problem.
Ancient to-do list.
This is an ancient to-do list. And what happens here is maybe if you haven't done a lot of your Christmas shopping and you've got someone that is very religious in your family, maybe you could go to Sotheby's tomorrow because you can buy the 10 Commandments. Not the original 10 Commandments, but a tablet that dates back to about 300 to 800 AD. It's a marble slab that weighs about 115 pounds. It's about approximately 2 feet tall. Paleo-Hebrew script on it, unearthed in 1913 during a railroad excavation in the Ottoman Empire.
Wow.
It was ignored for years, but we're only recently recognized for actually what it is. However, it doesn't have all the 10 Commandments. It's missing thou shalt not take the name of the Lord in vain. And it does have some extra ones.
But like all the other ones?
Yeah.
Are they still there?
Yeah. And then, but it does add some others. One of them instructs you to adhere to worship at Mount Gerizim, a holy site for Samaritans near the modern day city of Nablus.
Cool.
Yes. So they say it's vastly important historical document, tangible link to the beliefs that helped shape Western civilization. And of course, we need to sell it.
Well, or post it on the classroom wall.
Yes, exactly. That was I was thinking that too. That'd be more history than putting it just on the classroom wall. That'd be much more
America would still be better, even if we had, what was that? Byzantine, Ottoman.
Yes.
Yes.
Ten Commandments.
Yes, that's where it all comes from. Yes.
Speaking of that, by the way, I was wandering around schools the other day. They're so woke. They're so woke
Yeah.
these
In what way?
days. So, we can.
Flags.
I'm all for, even if it was Byzantine 10 Commandments. I think it'd be better than what we currently have up on our walls. Oh goodness,
Yeah.
Billy and I will get into that debate.
Yeah,
next.
we will. That's another one. Yeah, because I know the schools you were talking about, and I think the reason is different than what you believe it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a different
This
reason.
this was up on
Yeah, go
X.
ahead,
I
go ahead and
noticed.
talk about it a little
I
bit.
noticed that one school was heavily committed to gender and racial identity, while the other ones were more interested in skill development.
Yeah,
but we'll get into that. You're
we
listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
We are Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
It's 7 a.m. on the Jeff and Bill Show, and we're
Today's getting better and
still
better.
making you relive Kamala Harris's failures.
I felt that in the system like a week ago. I tell you, the studio hates me, but oh well, that's okay.
Well, speaking of Kamala Harris, she wants to do something about these school shootings. She is the vice president of the United States, but true to form, she needs more power, apparently, in order to be able to do something like that. Oh, boy. Billy and I discussing what is heartbreaking, this school shooting that took place in Wisconsin yesterday. What is it that needs to be addressed? Is it hardening of the schools? This is my perspective. It is a good guy with a gun that stops a bad guy with a gun. The quicker we can get a good guy there, the less loss of life that takes place. I would even support some forms of public execution to any school shooter that survives, because I'm so tired of this that I think if maybe we did that, we could bring back a strong message that you mess with our kids and it goes very, very, very poorly for you. Billy pointing out that maybe it's a Second Amendment issue, that we need to look at stronger restrictions on who is allowed to own a gun.
Yeah. Having some interesting conversations with people on the
lots of interesting conversations on that one.
And it's interesting to see the examples people pull, especially there's one that's pulling them from Israel and talking about armed people there and hardened schools and stuff without examining the gun ownership laws inside of Israel. And so you can't necessarily say that Israel is doing things right when you're only looking at two of the things that they are doing.
Well, they don't store their guns in their homes either.
But you have to be licensed to have a gun in Israel. Personal ownership.
And they put their guns in armories.
Yes.
That was part of the problem with October 7th.
You have to apply from the government, and you have to have a license. You go through background checks, you go through mental evaluations, and they give you a list of the guns you're allowed to have. They choose based on what you say your requirements are, the gun choices that you're allowed to purchase. Mm-hmm. We would never stand for that in America.
Nope.
So we can't we then can't turn and say Israel has it right based on hardening schools and preventing mass shootings when we don't look at their gun ownership rules to start with.
Well, I think, and I've seen this, if you go by a Jewish day school, dude, those things are forts. You have not just armed security, you have long gunned armed security out front. They don't mess around. They protect their kids. So I think there is something to learn from Israel, but you don't have to take everything. I think part of the problem you had on October 7th is you hit people without guns in their homes.
Oh, in some cases, I can see that. But again, that doesn't change the requirements based on gun ownership per se.
Right.
Yeah. And, they did keep them close. And again, the 7th was something that was different than something like a mass shooting that is normally carried out by an individual. This was something that was a coordinated attack that was done with lots of different people. And I can see the idea of, being able to fight back in that situation. However, what is that situation that has occurred in America recently? In the last 200 years, when has that situation necessarily occurred?
So it depends on the situation. So coordinated in the sense that there were multiple people, lots of people, yes. Evil with intent to kill, same thing. So if you have I remember I watched that IDF video that they put together of the attacks that was shown to members of Congress and stuff. And I remember calling my wife afterwards being like, that was another level of evil I've never seen. Like it is not, it's not a level of like, oh, I'm trying to rob you and the gun, shoots. It's not like what you typically see. It is, I am here to kill as many people as you can. And when you look at like Sandy Hook or even October 7th, it's kind of the same type of evil. It is to consume as much life and end it as physically possible until somebody shoots me and stops me. Yeah. And in that case, in both those cases, it was good guys with guns that stopped it.
Yeah. And this is the point in which I don't think that your idea about public executions and everything work as a deterrence, because I fail to see that those people starting the mass shootings want to get out alive. We rarely see that. In fact, in this case in Madison, she took her own life.
Yeah.
So she had no interest. A death penalty or a public execution or hanging wouldn't have dissuaded her from anything. Well, why? She went in there and killed herself afterwards. Yeah. Public executions wouldn't matter to her. If she made that without a public execution, you think she's going to hang around to have a public execution? No, she made the decision there to take her life. And that's what you see in a lot of these situations. And that's going to be the problem. That's why this idea of public shaming and deterrence isn't necessarily going to work, because they're not looking to live in the first place. We are discounting the fact of what is the psychological motivation for someone doing this.
But
they're so broken inside. They are trying to make everyone else externally feel the pain they are going through internally.
Doesn't that make the argument though that you've got to have somebody close by with a gun, a good guy with a gun?
No, it makes the argument that maybe the people that are hurting like this shouldn't have guns in the first place.
But,
we always
she didn't have the gun. She stole the gun.
We always default from the idea that we need to all have guns. We have more guns in this country than we have people. I
think that's a good thing.
We default again. That's what I'm saying. You say it's a good thing. So this is the price of admission in America,
and it's made us the freest, most prosperous, powerful country in the world.
It depends on how you are talking about free and prosperous and everything else.
Right.
That would depend on what those things look like and how we're going to rank them, because there are some ways that America is less free in certain aspects than other Western civilizations. But that's not a discussion we need to have at this point, nor do I believe that the large number of guns we have led to that. I don't think that's the reason. Yeah, because we have others.
You think a well-armed citizenry had nothing to do with the revolution?
Well, hang on. Revolution's different than where we are now. Yes,
but you said it led. Yeah. It didn't lead to where we are today.
Yeah, the large number of guns, because we have other Western civilizations that have had similar advances in society, also as far as GDP and technological growth and everything else, and they don't have the same system with firearms that we do. It's more difficult to get a firearm there. So it's not, you can't point to the fact that we have more guns being the reason that our society has grown so much and that we're leaders in the world.
Really?
China has almost no,
and has like
firearms.
No freedom there.
I know, but they have one of the largest GDPs, one of the largest economies in the world. That would be viewed as success in some cases.
I don't know if I would look at China,
in some cases, though,
economically is successful.
Well, yeah, they are successful economically, and based on, and right now, I mean, we're talking about just yesterday, looking at possibly
wages and stuff like that.
Well, what their GDP, their economic growth, everything else, their wealth, they're buying our debt. But yes, they are economically successful. They are our largest trading partner. No, I guess Canada and Mexico would be, but they are, they're one of our largest trading partners. Yes, they are economically successful, and they don't do it based on individual gun ownership. I'm just saying that it's not causal. The gun ownership does not cause what we have in America. It did help as far as
I think it directly causes what we have here in America.
No, because
I don't think you have America without the Second Amendment.
Yeah, I'm not certain about that. But again, I don't think that's a discussion for today.
All right.
No.
Well, lots coming in. Feel free to give us a call, 303-696-1971. We'll get to Blake here in just a second. Let's go to Joel Littleton. He's been waiting. Good morning, Joel. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Good morning.
Morning.
I think we need to put God back into our schools, which I know it happened in a private religious school.
Right.
But we need to be able to pray. The kids need to be able to pray when they eat, if that's what they want to do, the Pledge of Allegiance. Hunter safety is one.
Mm-hmm.
When I went to school, we learned we had optional hunter safety. We learned about guns.
Yeah.
They weren't hidden from us or, such an evil thing. We need to educate the children in guns. And teens, whatever, children, but they need to learn to respect the weapon before they can learn to, even in the house, have them in the house.
Now, Joel, I understand what you're saying. Joel, I understand what you're saying. And here's the thing is, earlier when we were talking about some of the things that I would do for gun ownership and changes would be things like licensing and training. I do think that everybody needs to go through a gun ownership and training class before they purchase a firearm. That's something I would do. I think it is silly that we allow some with absolutely zero practical training the ability to purchase a product that is designed to kill. I think that is silly. And that's what you're talking about. You're talking about the idea of training the kids. That's where I'm going with this. Training adults and making sure that there is training involved in the gun ownership. I would do training and testing, because the one thing I want to make sure you do if you are a private gun owner and you pull your gun, I want to be damn sure you hit what you're aiming at. I want to make sure that you are as good a shot as you possibly can, that when you pull that gun, you defend yourself to the best of your possible ability. but we allow someone to purchase a weapon without any training at all.
I can protect my own house, but no, I don't have training to carry concealed weapon. I don't want that because I don't want to be in a Walmart and have to feel like I should protect other people because I don't have that proper training. I agree with that. I'm with you 100% on that. I had guns on an unlocked gun rack growing up in the house. If one was touched, I got the belt. There was parent involvement. You don't touch the gun unless the parent is there.
Yeah, I guess to Joel's point,
participation.
What do you think happened where, and we get these calls all the time, and this is before my time, but people are like, yeah, I grew up with the shotgun hanging in the back of my car, went to high school, and we went hunting afterwards. It was never a big deal. You grew up you had plenty of kids growing up until the last 20 years or so with guns in the home, and you didn't have mass shootings taking place. So what do you think the change was in our culture?
Our gun culture changed. Our gun culture.
You think our gun culture changed?
Yeah, our gun culture changed 110%. Our gun culture changed by 180 degrees.
Because it seemed like guns were more accessible,
but
and more acceptable.
Joel, when you were younger,
20 years ago,
what were the guns that were in your home?
They were a 410 shotgun and 222 rifles.
Yeah, we had a couple of 22s, we had a 30-06, and we had about 6 shotguns of different gauges.
Yeah.
Now I'm assuming that you had some guns ownership in home, Jeff, in your house as well. I'm assuming they're going to be shotguns, possibly even a handgun. Now the number one gun ownership thing is an AR-15.
Which is just a rifle.
No, but that's different than a shotgun or a 22. And this is what it is. Where I'm going with this is back when Joel was a kid and I was a kid and Jeff was a kid, the guns that were owned were for sport and for hunting, not for this idea of being a personal defense warrior. We didn't buy the guns that were on the wall at Joel's house didn't look like military weapons. They weren't trying to be military weapons. They weren't modified to try to shoot as fastly as possible. You couldn't put something on the back end of the gun, the bump stock, that would allow it to become functionally automatic. That's not what we were doing.
Was with a handgun.
I know, but you're asking about culture. I'm not talking about that. We're not discussing the individual shooting here. I'm telling you, the gun culture has changed. If you would have gone to a gun show 15, 20 years ago, the AR-15 would be over in the corner and everybody at the show would look at that person as the weirdo. Why are we doing that? That's not the guns we're interested in now. That is the showstopper. That's the main event. That's what everybody goes to see. That's front and center. That's the change in our gun culture. That's where this comes from. Yes.
How does that result in more death? Like I don't get how you to Joel's point, you had people around guns all the time. Now because the guns are scarier or look like military, all of a sudden we're like, yeah, let's go use them against people.
Because the gun culture is now let's go use them against people versus when we were growing up like with Joel.
Who is saying let's go use them against people?
That's how they're marketed. Remember, when we talk about the Second Amendment, it used to be about the idea of hunters and stuff like that. That's what it was when I was a kid. Yes, it was.
No,
when I was a kid.
This was why the Supreme Court has gone back on that, because progressives went in this direction of you have a gun only for hunting.
No,
you had a gun. We went to war against another country because we had guns. That was using them against other people.
It wasn't over gun ownership. And what I'm saying is the change in the marketing and the change in the culture is such that it is now about personal self-defense. It's not about hunting. And even the rulings that have come out of our court system have shown that. It used to be about a well-regulated state militia and things like that and what you were using the gun for. There were times in which sawed-off shotguns weren't allowed in this country. But now we've gone to an idea of this personal defense. And that's where we've gone. And that's the change in our society. And that is the change in gun ownership.
The Revolutionary War. We fought civil wars. We've used guns to kill other people throughout the history of this country. The original idea of the Second Amendment was not about hunting.
No, it was about self-protection of government.
Against tyranny.
Really. Not necessarily. It was a balance. It was a balance. The reason the Second Amendment exists is a balance between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists at the time. The Federalists didn't want to the Federalists wanted to have a large standing national army. Anti-Federalists did not. It was a giveaway by the Federalists to the Anti-Federalists to not have a large standing army. That's the reason it started. It also was rolled into the slave owner states, and it has to do with the idea of how do you put down slave rights and some other stuff. It was used as law enforcement. That's where the genesis of the Second Amendment comes out of. And the idea, and if the idea that we have the guns and we're going to protect ourselves from the government, nobody's been paying attention to the drones. So you're not going to win that fight. You're not going to win that fight at all.
Shooting down the drones?
No, you're not going to win that fight.
I think a well-regulated citizenry would help us shoot down drones.
No, not at all. Not at all.
All right. Well, Joel, I sure appreciate the call.
You,
we've got phone lines coming in here. Joel's line will be open 303-696-1971. Let's check in on news and comment with Blake Olson. Good morning, Blake.
Hey, good morning, Jeff and Billy. 27 and cloudy in Denver, expecting a high of 52 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story. And my computer freezes right when I do that. But DJT with some clarity about the Biden regime and the White House trying to clamp down and tamp down on concerns over a rash of unidentified drone sightings in the Northeast. National Security Council spokesman John Kirby said that there's no national security threat, and the activity seems to be from commercial hobbyists or law enforcement drones. A teacher and a teenager were killed in the Abundant Life Christian School shooting in Madison, Wisconsin on Tuesday. 2 students remain in critical condition and 4 others suffered non-life-threatening injuries. The shooter, a 15-year-old girl, reportedly took her own life. And we had a couple of callers. I'm going to see if I can pull this up here and see if my computer can come back up, because I wanted everyone to hear this. All of our great callers and on this subject, as Jeff and Billy talked about it last hour. I'll try to get to it. But on the subject of school shootings and Second Amendment, of course, I'll try to get to it in just a second. Jurors in the high-profile murder trial of a former tech consultant charged in last year's killing of Cash App founder Bob Lee have reached a verdict. Just what they've decided is not yet known, as the verdict won't be announced until this morning. Back to DJT in his press conference on Monday, he talked about the corrupt Joe and Biden regime and the lefties taking steel from the border and selling it dirt cheap to slow down production by 47. He says he's going to do whatever he can to stop that, and he's working with officials in Texas to prevent that from happening. A former hotel that currently serves as a Denver homeless shelter is getting a new contract from the city. The city council voted in favor of the new contract with Quebec Hospitality Monday. The city has been using the 138 rooms at the former hotel on Quebec Street as a homeless shelter for families since last year. The original agreement expired earlier this year, though the owner allowed the city to continue using the property. The agreement will pay Quebec Hospitality over $6 million to lease the property until the end of February. Now back to DJT talking about the drone sightings.
Our military knows where they took off from. If it's a garage, they can go right into that garage. They know where it came from and where it went. And for some reason, they don't want to comment. And I think they'd be better off saying what it is. Our military knows and our president knows. And for some reason, they want to keep people in suspense. I can't imagine it's the enemy, because if it was the enemy, they'd blast it out. Even if they were late, they'd blast it. Something strange is going on. For some reason, they don't want to tell the people. And they should, because the people are really, I mean, they happen to be over Bedminster.
You should know
they're very close to Bedminster. I think maybe I won't spend the weekend in Bedminster. I've decided to cancel.
And then here's Brian, one of our great callers, talking about the school shooting in what could be done and what needs to be done at schools across the nation.
There's a metal detector and a security guard standing there waiting for you with one entry point. You can't sneak in around the courthouse and go in a back door and take out a judge and one of your enemies who's up for trial. So we can protect, congressmen. We can protect those people simply with a metal detector and an armed guard.
And DJT, once again, in his press conference on Monday, talked about Joe Biden stealing that steel and trying to sell it dirt cheap so the 47 and his administration can't get to the wall quickly and finish it.
We ordered an additional 200 miles of wall. It's very expensive. And now it's about double the price of what it would have been 6 years ago. The administration is trying to sell it for 5 cents on the dollar, knowing that we're getting ready to put it up. And what they're doing is really an act. It's almost a criminal act. If we don't have it, we're going to have to rebuild it, and it'll cost double what it cost years ago, and that's hundreds of millions of dollars, because you're talking about, as you see, they're trying to sell it for 5 cents on the dollar, but we'll spend hundreds of millions of dollars more on building the same wall that we already have.
A Denver police officer will serve 150 hours of community service and 9 months of probation for striking a juvenile suspect last year. Dat Trong was found guilty of harassment by a jury last month. Investigators said Trong struck the teenage suspect last year while he was handcuffed inside a police cruiser. Trong is employed as a police officer, though he was placed in a non-patrol position last year. The Avs lose to the Canucks, the Nuggets over the Kings last night. And I agree with Patrick Bet-David on this one. Here's one of the reasons the NBA is down 48% the last 12 years. Coach Greg Popovich, a couple of months ago, what a clown.
So he's pathetic. He's small. He's a whiner. We all know that. But you wouldn't have him babysit your kids.
He's talking about Trump.
You wouldn't hire him if you had a small business. You want that man in your business? There's no way.
Yeah, yes, I do.
But you're going to vote for him for president because he's strong? I mean, Kamala Harris whipped his ass in the debate. Just obviously. And he's running ever since. He doesn't want any part of her. Because as she said before, she's eaten many of his type for lunch.
Oh, yeah.
As an attorney general, as a prosecutor. He's a small fry compared to some of the people she's gone after.
He suffers from TDS.
A question for you, Blake, on
this. Yes.
That's great audio. I'm so glad you're pointing this out, because
I have more, don't worry.
Do conservatives in sports denigrate Democrats the way Democrats denigrate Republicans?
No.
Right?
We have to live with it every day.
Well, I feel like let's look at like Tim Tebow, for instance, or Peyton Manning, or Bo Nix, all personally conservative. Mm-hmm. They follow Christ. They talk about the game. They talk about the sports. They talk about their faith. Mm-hmm. Progressives in sports denigrate conservatives the whole time. I mean, are there examples of Republicans in sports or conservatives in sports that just hammer on Joe Biden? I guess
no.
I mean, you had one.
They actually have to lie and say, we're going to treat him with respect they wear like a DJT hat.
Yes. Right. You remember the football player that got busted for wearing a Trump hat?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But he wasn't going, how terrible is Joe Biden?
Well, he was showing it off, but what? Whatever. So what?
So it's a likability issue. Yeah. So that guy right there, he's going up and using his platform, and he's just spitting, anger and frustration towards conservative.
He's one of the most no wonder
nobody wants to watch. Nobody wants to watch that.
I agree. Just play. Just play. You're always going to have conservatives. You're always going to have lefties. You're always going to have people in the middle. People want to watch sports and escape from all that. So, have fun with it. But you know what? Sports are patriotic. They're very American, especially football. and basketball, both invented here in the most popular sports, along with baseball, invented here. And, that's a chance to just forget about all the stuff that we don't agree with and just celebrate. It's going to a concert and listen to music.
Does the sport have to reflect the culture? Here's another question I have for you. I saw somebody, this was trending on Twitter, I think the other day, that the reason the WNBA doesn't do well, and it lost like 50 million in past years, and this year only lost 40 million because of Caitlin Clark. Right. But it's not at all hitting the numbers. But because a good portion of the league's made up of lesbians?
I think so. I mean, no one wants
to talk about that. But it just doesn't reflect the culture. Is that like one of the challenges they face, is that the American culture is not made up of lesbians, and you have a league that is, and it just doesn't connect.
Well, they push it instead of pushing great basketball players. We don't care. I don't care what you do in your private time.
Right.
I just do not care. If you handle the ball and you shoot well and you play great defense and you're exciting and you play the game well and you don't cheat the game, that's all I care about. I love women's basketball in college. It could be a blast to watch, but what we saw with the wokeism with the WNBA, they're going to kill themselves, financially, even though they're supported by men. The men's game, the NBA, and they couldn't survive without the NBA.
It's not the lesbianism.
I think you mean of its popularity?
Of the WNBA. Like why can't the WNBA connect with popular culture? Like why does it lose tens of millions of dollars every single year?
Well, I mean, the main reason is they don't play above the rim. I mean,
it's just not as exciting as the dudes.
I mean, unless they made it a smaller court and the rim at 8 feet, you're never going to have that. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, unfortunately, it's just biology. I mean, you've seen what the greatest athletes in the world look like on a basketball court. So it's tough to just flip over and watch a women's game unless you appreciate what they're doing, defensively and schematically, offensively, and all the fundamentals that you see. You can appreciate the competition in a women's game. I can. However, we know what the greatest athletes look like on a basketball court, so you're never going to be able to compete with that. So you just make it competitive. Yes.
Yeah. Why do AAA and AA baseball teams draw smaller crowds than Major League Baseball teams?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah,
same thing.
However, it's not the best, right? Is that it's just not the best?
Yeah, it's like a talent and skill. And when you compare, and I believe Blake's right, when you compare what you see in the average NBA fan and how they see the game, there is a smaller portion of that fan that will lean into the more technical aspects of the game, which would be the WNBA type of fans, people that are looking for more of the strategy, not the flash. And the Flash wins.
But what do I'm sorry to interrupt, Jeff, but Billy, what do AAA and AA and single A minor league teams, what do they do that the WNBA does not better than? I mean, they don't do better than minor league baseball. You know what that is?
No, what?
They have freaking fun. You go to minor league games,
that is a good point.
And the mascots are crazy. They're awesome. I mean, they're creative, and it is a stinking circus, right? When you get there.
That's a great point.
Minor league games are awesome to go to because there is something going on every second of the game.
That's a great idea because you see in the NBA they start playing a lot of extra music. You now have music as you're bringing the ball down the court. You've got all these other things, and as soon as they blow the whistle to stop the play, music starts. It's supposed to be
it's becoming more entertaining.
Yeah, so I think you got something there, Blake, that if they would lean into more of the entertainment aspect and even some of the silliness that happens. My kids, I've got out of the 4 kids, there's only one that is an NFL fan. There's only one that really cares about the NFL at all. But there's one game every season all my kids want to go to, and it's the one game that has the halftime show where the mascots play the little kids. They don't care who the Broncos are playing. They don't care what day it is. They just want to go see that.
You guys have seen the Savannah Bananas, right?
Yes.
And the entertainment factor there. I guess last week we were discussing this about Caitlin Clark, and I saw a few posts, and I just went, I'm going to ask the guys about this.
I think it's a good point.
Somebody said, well, it's because Caitlin has a boyfriend. And then I was like,
Traditional values.
And then somebody else said, well, and this was just online, the league is dominated, or at least has a good number of lesbians within the league, and that's why it doesn't connect with American culture. And I was going, well, I want to ask the guys about that. Do you think that plays into the challenge that the WNBA has?
No, personally, I don't.
I think there's a small percentage of it, but I mean, we don't know who is a lesbian and who isn't.
And the thing is, they're not kissing each other during warm-ups nor on the court. So what happens?
Even though that may help ratings.
Exactly, it just might. Exactly.
Lean more into it.
There you go.
The kiss cam. The kiss cam is now on the players.
Yes. I love it. No, I think you bring up a great point. I think what helped me think of this was you guys talking about it right there. They take themselves way too seriously. Way too seriously. I mean, for the love of God, they're playing basketball. I mean, they're fortunate they can make a living at least part of the year, playing basketball. And it could be far worse. I think they've made great
maybe
strides,
it's the politics. And just kind of feeling like you're getting lectured to all the time.
Yeah.
Right? Like when you listen to Popovich right there, you're like, turn the channel. Like I came to watch a basketball game.
No,
I don't want to hear about that.
Absolutely. Especially when he's wrong.
Yeah.
Although I think the thing with Popovich kind of spreads off of where I have this huge problem with reporters and lack of journalistic integrity is we've started asking individual reporters their opinions on stories rather than just reporting facts. And we have entire TV shows that are built around that. And now it's crossing over into coaches being able to say what they're doing. And we get into players saying what they're doing and they're supposed to pay attention and have all their voice. I mean, we have NBA players and NFL players all the time can express their political opinion, but that's what we've kind of leaned into is we want to know what their opinions are.
But if a player goes, I'm here because of my faith in Jesus Christ. I want to thank my Lord and Savior Jesus. And they're diving into their faith. I love it. Yeah. So maybe it's just the political side.
And being honest, I probably wouldn't love it if he was Muslim and he started talking about Allah. But he has the right to do that, and I celebrate that. And I've seen it. I've seen that plenty of times. So. I try to put the shoe on the other foot. I think the problem I have is you ask Popovich that he goes on forever. And
20 minutes.
He says whatever he wants. But if you were to say, wait a minute, actually, and then you question him on that, you would be thrown out of that room, or you would be escorted and or you would never be allowed to go to another Spurs game as a reporter. I've been in that situation and I've dealt with him. He's a miserable human being. He's one of the worst. I mean, he's like, he thinks he's funny. He thinks he's witty and he thinks he's really smart. And he's not. He's a basketball coach. That's great. He's a great basketball coach. Good for him. And actually, I think he's a veteran also. I respect that. But he is clueless when it comes to in my opinion, politics and what's going on today. He has no idea. But he really thinks he's smart. So anyway, I love the discussion. And I got my computer back. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. All right, 22 in Castle Pines, 24 in Arvada, 27 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue Tuesday morning. Jeff's going to try to get a WNBA franchise here in Denver soon. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
A Pacific cold front will be racing through the region today. The impacts on Denver will be minimal, however. The high country will see some snow today and into the evening, but Denver and the Front Range will generally be partly to mostly cloudy. Highs upper 40s and low 50s, becoming windy this afternoon, and you may feel it turning a bit colder by late afternoon and evening, and lows tonight in the lower to middle 20s. Partly cloudy and dry with highs in the 50s Wednesday through Friday, with overnight lows 20s and 30s. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Well, we're going from one topic to the next today. Welcome to the Jeff and Bill Show. We've talked school shootings, we've talked the WNBA, lesbianism, and now, should there be bounties on illegal immigrants? This is from Fox News. Incoming Missouri state lawmaker introducing a bill to give $1,000 to anyone who turns in illegal migrants. He said, I promise to make Missouri a national leader in combating illegal immigration. Now, Bill, what's wild about this is I put that poll up yesterday that said, how many illegal immigrants does Donald Trump need to deport in order for his presidency to be successful? 1 million, which would put him on par with pretty much what he did his first term. 4 million, which would be about 4 times more. That would be a big win in my mind. Four times more than we had under him would be great. 8 million, holy cow, or 20 million. 60% said 20 million. That was on a vote of over 500 people.
That's crazy.
That makes it almost a scientific poll. Still better than what Iowa was doing. But
that's crazy.
So 20 million. So that's everybody.
Yeah, that's everyone.
They want
some
everybody
probably
gone.
don't exist too. Based on official numbers.
Well, start paying people $1,000 to bounty illegal immigrants. An incoming Missouri state lawmaker, this was what you might have to do in order to get 20 million. Introduced a bill to provide $1,000 to people who report illegal migrants to authorities. Republican State Senator-elect David Gregory proposed a measure offering $1,000 to any person who turned in an illegal migrant who was subsequently arrested. Good idea, bad idea. We're going to turn neighbors on each other, or should they go? Give us a call, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. Speaking of Dan Caplis, I adore this guy. I have a poll up right now on x.com/Jeff Hunt. Who you would pick for the Republican nominee for Colorado governor? Write others in comments. I could only put 4 people there: Heidi Ganahl, Mark Baisley, Dan Caplis, or Greg Lopez. Dan Caplis coming in 2 with over 25%. Heidi Ganahl number 1, but Dan Caplis number 2. There's people out there that want to be governor, but if you need a lawyer in an injury case, Dan Caplis needs to be your first call. Because who you choose to represent you, all those attorneys, those court battles that you might be going through, you don't want one of those ambulance chasing lawyers you saw go by on a bus billboard. It's going to send the wrong message. Show up with a guy that's pro-life, pro-family, pro-America, the former son of a police officer, or the son of a police officer and former seminarian who's dedicated the last 40 years of his life to helping people. He's about serving people. And in doing so, he's a real winner. Listen to this. Dan is believed to be the only lawyer in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar verdicts in Colorado crash cases. Dan is also believed to have won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado history. Dan Caplis Law, the official law firm partner of the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Avalanche. Dan Caplis Law is a serious firm for serious cases. You may be asking yourself, well, could I afford him? Well, Dan accepts righteous injury cases on a percentage fee basis so that he can represent good people from all walks of life without regard to ability to pay. So if you need Dan's help, give him a call, 303-770-5551. Chances are you're not on the side of the road going, sure, I need an attorney, an injury case attorney right now. So if you do end up in an accident, do you want to be scrambling to try to find Dan Caplis' phone number? No. So just put it in your phone right now. Dan Caplis Law. 303-770-5551 or hit dancaplis.law.com. That's Dan, C-A-P-L-I-S law.com. We'll continue with those phone calls and texts coming in. What do you think of this bounty issue for illegal immigrants? You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
At this hour, I'm Christina Owayo in Dallas, and here are your top stories. President Donald Trump saying that Venezuela will take back the hundreds of thousands of illegal migrants that are in the country when he starts up his mass deportation plan, or they will face major consequences.
They're all taking them back, yep. And if they don't, they'll be met very harshly economically.
While speaking at a news conference at Mar-a-Lago, the president-elect also accused the Biden administration of wasting hundreds of millions of dollars by dumping the border wall panels instead of allowing Trump to use those to finish the wall.
We ordered an additional 200 miles of wall. It's very expensive. And now it's about double the price of what it would have been 6 years ago. And the administration is trying to sell it for 5 cents on the dollar, knowing that we're getting ready to put it up. And what they're doing is really an act. It's almost a criminal act. That has nothing to do with a smooth transition. That has to do with people really trying to stop our nation. And all it means really is that we're going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars more.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau faces the biggest test of his political career after Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland, one of his most powerful and loyal ministers, announced that she was resigning from the cabinet.
That's what you need to know at this hour. In Dallas, Christina Ohio, Salem News Channel.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Would you turn in an illegal alien for a $1,000 bounty? Well, there's a Missouri lawmaker that's proposing it.
Mark Crowley just tried to arrest me.
8875 saying, I'd never turn in my mother-in-law, who is an illegal alien who lives at 6914 South 4. drives a blue Escort. Would this just create a disaster? And who fields them? And, you know, do you drag them by their ears into an ICE agency?
Yeah.
But or would you be happy to collect a $1,000 bounty? The poll's up on x.com/Jeff Hunt. Let's go to Dwayne in Divide. Good morning, Dwayne. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Morning.
Oh, good morning, gentlemen. Yet another festive day of excitement and things to talk about in America.
That's right. So how about you, Dwayne? Are you going to turn in your illegal alien neighbors for $1,000 a pop?
Well, let's see. Since I became a legal citizen by being a green card holder and all. Yes, very simply, yes. I will hunt them down, drag them, talk them into sitting there and doing anything. I'll hold out the possibility of owning a taco truck. Anything I need to do to get them in the back of the van. And once they're in there, they'll sit there and get a small whiff of chloroform, so they're very peaceful as they get taken over to the ice. Because our sheriff up here likes to have ICE come by and pick everybody up. So, you know,
Dwayne, it's funny. It's funny you're talking about that, Dwayne.
Yes,
it's funny you're talking about that because Mark Crowley, when he was trying to arrest me for being an illegal alien a minute ago, said that all he would do is he would head down to the local Home Depot and put up a sign that said, you know, jobs, and put them on the back of the truck and just drive him down and say, I caught him. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Dwayne,
I mean, you know,
stick around real quick. We
is...
got to get to a break. I want to continue this conversation. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
We are Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
back to the Jeff and Bill show. Would you turn in an illegal alien for a $1,000 bounty? Well, there's a Missouri state lawmaker who wants to do that. He's introduced a bill to give $1,000 to anyone who turns in illegal migrants. This isn't just bounty hunters. This would allow local citizens to serve as bounty hunters for the purpose of finding and detaining illegal aliens in the state. I put a poll up on my X account, x.com/Jeff Hunt right now. 30 votes, 93% saying yes. Others saying I'll do it for free. We're talking with Dwayne in Divide. And Dwayne, somebody texted in saying, well, those apartment complexes in Aurora would be a good place to start.
Yes, indeed. No, yeah. Yes. All kidding aside, because I can see some small problems of the guy who's been here since he was a kid and he's legal. But overall, we need to do something. I mean, not necessarily that we need to put the handcuffs on them as our own citizenry, but sit there and tell law enforcement, you see that trailer over there? That might be a good place to start.
Yeah.
And go from that direction.
Well, 6135 texted in saying, well, we have 80,000 IRS agents. This would be a better use of their time.
And they have weapons and they're weapons trained, which is always nice. So they have that. Yeah. By the way, would you tell Billy I sent him the $2.99 on the Cash App so I could have the second part of this phone call? I didn't know I had to pay today.
Yes, you did.
Just let him know that he got
you got to earn money every
so
day. Yes, I appreciate that.
Yeah, every time I call in, it's $3. So I was like, okay, otherwise I don't get 20 seconds. So, but it's we have to do something.
Do you think this though? I mean, neighbor versus neighbor, just because someone's Hispanic, now all of a sudden ICE is getting called on them. Is that going to happen here?
I believe that's going to be a small percentage of it. Yeah. It's pretty easy to tell who's legal and who's not, and we'll just work from there. So we can work with those directions. Is it going to be a cluster? Oh, I think there's been so many clusters in the last 4 years that can only get better.
Yeah. No, that's a great call. I appreciate it, Dwayne. Thanks so much for joining the Jeff and Bill show today.
Thanks for giving me the money right away.
Dwayne.
I appreciate that.
Dwayne's line's open. You can give us a call and join the conversation, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115, 720-819-5115. Bill, would you turn in an illegal alien for a $1,000 bounty?
Yeah, I might be persuaded to. The problem is that I see in this is how do you determine who the illegal alien is?
Yeah.
And this is the problem that we have is we all think we're experts. And we had a conversation yesterday about illegal immigration. And some people said they could tell who is illegal and who wasn't based on how they use toilet paper. That's shocking. I mean, if you have that amount of ability that you can determine someone's legality in this country based on how they use toilet paper, you should be talking to the president right now. And that's the problem is we had other people calling in and saying, well, I know these people are illegal. And someone that called in identified a group of immigrants that are in the country legally. They were asked to come here.
How many callers do you think would call to get me deported?
Oh, hundreds.
Or to get you deported.
Oh, hundreds.
Right?
Would
this become a tool to just go after people you don't like?
Yeah, it would be. And that's what it'll be, is it'll be flooded, and it'll be to the point of where it will be nearly useless. And the problem being is once you receive the phone call, how do you check? So
an ICE agent would have to show up. Yeah.
So what you're doing is now you call, and then the person shows up where? At the house? Knock, knock, knock. Can I see your papers?
Yeah.
That's what we're ending. That's where we're going with this one. It's a really weird idea. Now, there is a portion of it where they will license bounty hunters and other security agents in order to do it. And that intrigues me. Because they have some other rules.
The bounty hunter
involved in what they do. But an average citizen, it's a nightmare.
Daniel texted in saying, I'm Mexican. I'd do it. And I'd be rich.
Yeah. But what if someone keeps calling about you, Daniel? Every day you got to answer the door because they keep calling about you.
Would you turn in an illegal immigrant for $1,000 bounty? A Missouri lawmaker wants to make that legal in Missouri. We'll continue the conversation. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
We are Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
It is 8 a.m. in the Mile High City. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. Well, we've debated just about everything today, and we're going to continue this conversation. We've talked school shootings. We've talked lesbians in the WNBA. We've talked Caitlin Clark. We've talked whether or not now you want to accept a $1,000 bounty to turn in an illegal immigrant. And the messages on this one are off the chain. I've got a poll at x.com/Jeff Hunt. Would you turn in an illegal alien for a $1,000 bounty? We're at nearly 100 votes now. Yes, 96.7%. And the message is, heck, I'd do it for free. $1,000, too generous. I'd do it for $5 of Chick-fil-A coupons. I'd do it for free, $50 and I'm in. Hey, I'd even buy a 15-passenger van and deliver illegals to Tom Homan's tent city myself for $1,000 a head. So what do you think? We'll get to the phone lines on this. Would this just create a disaster of neighbor versus neighbor? ICE having to keep up with all these phone calls now coming in. Could you see violence or people with brown skin going to get stopped just because and asked for their papers by random citizens on the street? We raise this because a Missouri lawmaker has introduced a law in Missouri that would essentially allow anybody, any citizen, to turn in an illegal immigrant for $1,000 bounty. So we'd love to hear from you. Give us a call. Phone line 303-696-1971, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Capitalist Law text line at 720-819-5115. Those text messages come right into the studio here, 720-819-5115. Let's check in on news and comment with Blake Olson. Good morning, Blake.
Hey, good morning, Jeff and Billy. 29 and cloudy in Denver, expecting a high of 52 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story.
We'll soon unleash American energy, and this will be done at levels not seen before, issuing quick approvals for pipelines, drilling, and other infrastructure. It'll be clean energy, and we'll bring in the price of electricity, and we're going to bring it down fast. We're also going to
Great news for Coloradans and citizens in the Great American West. DJT with a pretty entertaining press conference on Monday. Let's go. Energy.
to create clean coal. Clean coal is something that has really taken over. We have coal that will last for over 1,000 years. We have so much coal, and with a process, it becomes clean coal. It's very powerful energy, unlike wind. It's very, very powerful, and we're going to be doing a lot of clean coal for the people of West Virginia and others, Wyoming, so many states. We have great states.
DJT says he will look at possibly pardoning embattled New York City Mayor Eric Adams. Adams is facing federal fraud and corruption charges. The president-elect went on to say he wasn't familiar with the specifics regarding Adams's charges. A motive in yesterday's Madison, Wisconsin school shooting is still being determined by police. A 15-year-old girl killed a teacher and a student and injured 6 others at Abundant Life Christian School before police say she turned the gun on herself. 2 people remain in critical condition with what are said to be life-threatening injuries. A classified briefing on the recent drone activity in the Northeast is set to be held today for members of the House Intelligence Committee. Reps from the FBI, CIA, and National Intelligence Agency will be in attendance. Meanwhile, New Jersey Congressman Josh Gottheimer, a Democrat, is calling for a new drone air traffic control system to track drones when flying over critical infrastructure. 47 on the drones.
Our military knows where they took off from. If it's a garage, they can go right into that garage. They know where it came from and where it went. And for some reason, they don't want to comment. And I think they'd be better off saying what it is. Our military knows and our president knows. And for some reason, they want to keep people in suspense.
The Denver school system is trying to reassure families ahead of a possible immigration crackdown by the incoming Trump administration. DPS issued a statement on Friday saying that the district is committed to doing everything possible to protect the community from unlawful federal overreach. Current policies bar federal immigration law enforcement activities on DPS property, and the district plans to offer education to all students regardless of immigration status. The statement was signed by Superintendent Alex Marrero and all 7 members of the Denver School Board. TikTok is turning to the Supreme Court to block a law that's set to ban the app next month. The law, which requires the Chinese-owned platform to be sold or shut down, goes into effect January 19th. TikTok on Monday petitioned the High Court to stop the law, arguing it violates the company's First Amendment free speech rights. The Avalanche lose the Canucks tonight, the NBA Cup championship game. The Bucks and the Thunder in Las Vegas, because the NBA regular season sucks and they know it, so they have to create some garbage to sell it. The Nuggets over the Kings last night, and I agree with Patrick Bet David. One of the reasons the NBA is down 48% over the last 12 years is head coach Greg Popovich of the Spurs. He hates DJT.
So he's pathetic. He's small. He's a whiner. We all know that. But
no, we don't. Suffers from TDS. He's one of the most miserable human beings I've ever had to be around. 26 in Littleton, 27 in Glendale, 29 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue. Tuesday morning, Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
A Pacific cold front will be racing through the region today. The impacts on Denver will be minimal, however. The high country will see some snow today and into the evening, but Denver and the Front Range will generally be partly to mostly cloudy. Highs upper 40s and low 50s, becoming windy this afternoon, and you may feel it turning a bit colder by late afternoon and evening, and lows tonight in the lower to middle 20s. Partly cloudy and dry with highs in the 50s Wednesday through Friday, with overnight lows 20s and 30s. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome to the Jeff and Bill Show, firing up the conversations that everybody's thinking in their minds, but too dangerous to have on the radio. Definitely not happening on any other station.
Yeah, we're not
You're just going to get a monologue. Would you be willing to pay $1,000? Sorry. Would you be willing to get paid $1,000 to turn in a legal immigrant? And would this just unleash a whole bunch of problems? Suzanne texting in saying, well, this just sounds like Nazi Germany. Others going, is this a one-time payment or is it recurring? I think it's $1,000 per illegal immigrant. At least that's what the Missouri law is bringing up. And if this happens in Missouri, well, the illegal immigrant's just going to leave. Maybe that's the point. Let's go to the phone line. Spencer, good morning. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. I got a lot going on inside my head. I'm struggling to put it into words, so bear with me. Billy, over the last few weeks, I've listened to you kind of lay out the problems with mass deportation. And I can't help but feel like the left was either fully aware that these problems would occur and still continued on their same pathway of anti-deportation, which makes them pure evil, or else they didn't realize these would be problems, which makes them stupid. Is that a fair assessment?
I'm not sure. Tell me what problems you're talking about. Are you talking about problems with having illegals in the country or problems with the deportation?
Like your questions of how is this going to happen? How are we going to do this? The cost alone, the tearing up of families, pitting Americans against Americans, Americans against illegal immigrants, legal immigrants against illegal immigrants. They either knew that these problems, we would face it, which makes them pure evil, or they didn't know, and that makes them pure stupid. Is that a fair assessment?
No, I don't believe it's a fair assessment. And the reason why is I'll use it this way to help explain. Would it be a fair assessment for me to say the people that voted for Donald Trump and talk about getting all the illegals out, the people that voted in Jeff's poll yesterday, where 60% of them said they wanted all 20 million illegal immigrants deported out of the country, are they evil for not understanding the process, or are they stupid for not understanding the process about how difficult that would be to accomplish in the first place? So the lack of understanding of the problem, I don't think, is necessarily dispositive of what's going on either side. I think that the liberals did not accurately, did not ask enough questions and point out some of the problems with the promises of Donald Trump and how to deport all the illegals. I also think that I think both sides, and more in the liberals lately, but I think both the liberals and the conservatives want to keep the immigration system broken for a couple of reasons. One being cheap labor, the other one being for a cudgel to use for politicking. I really don't at the core think that either party wants to have a solution because they can get votes off of it. That's kind of my perspective.
Well, listen, I've heard a few on the left say the quiet part out loud. If we don't allow, or if we get rid of illegal immigrants, who's going to scrub our toilets? Who's going to pick our food?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that is absolutely telling. I've never heard a conservative say that, and correct me if I'm wrong. But that kind of mentality towards illegal immigration, cheap labor, that's evil. That's taking it. That's no different than me going to Home Depot and picking up all the illegal immigrants and having them work all day long just to have ICE meet them at the end of the day so I don't have to pay them.
Well, do you think the farmers that are employing the illegal migrants and immigrants to pick the crops and the people that are employing them in hotels and stuff, are they evil?
Yes.
So
yes.
The employers are evil.
They're taking advantage of a horrible situation so that they either can stay in business or make more money. That is evil. You're taking advantage of a horrible situation for your own gain.
I'm not certain I would go as far as evil, but I understand the idea, and I agree with you on the idea of taking advantage of your own situation. Now, the other part, though, is that some of those voters I just outlined, like big corporate hotel owners and also farmers, they broke for Trump. So that's not necessarily the liberals that are out there trying to reap all of the benefits from illegal immigration. There's a horse apiece on those, and that's why I feel that neither party really wants to solve the problem, because both parties derive benefits from it.
Well, it seems to me like Donald Trump wants to solve the problem.
Does he?
And I've heard you belittle his efforts. If you're in a sinking boat, do you bail water first or do you plug the leak?
I think what you do is, if there is someone that is in charge, that's the captain, like Donald Trump, they need to tell you what you're going to do in order to keep the ship from sinking. And so far, we don't have any instructions from him. We don't know if we're all supposed to put on life vests and jump off the boat. We don't know if we're supposed to grab buckets. We don't know if we're supposed to run over to the hole and start plugging it. We don't know, and that's why I keep asking the question.
He was trying to plug the leak. He was trying to secure the southern border, which is the main point of entry.
I disagree.
And now we see that, Biden is selling off all the excess materials in a fire sale just to have us spend more money when DJT gets into office to buy those materials again to continue building the wall.
Yeah, but we shouldn't be buying them. But Spencer, to be fair, we shouldn't be buying them in the first place because we were promised that Mexico is paying for the wall. And I am going to continue to bang that drum because we had people chanting that during his campaign, and that was the promise. I'm not going to, just for the conversation, let him loose on that one. And I know there's going to be a lot of mental gymnastics to make sure that people acquiesce and say that, oh, but I think it's done this way and this way. No, he said, build wall, Mexico pay, full stop. And that's not happening. I understand, and I believe it is underhanded what Biden's doing, but I don't necessarily have that much empathy or sympathy for it because we were sold a bill of goods, free wall. We didn't get free wall.
Free wall.
We were told free wall.
And Bill, you're ignoring all of the trade, all of the tariffs that came in that relationship with Mexico, and the fact that Mexico themselves paid for that remain in Mexico. They used their own troops. They partnered with the United States to stop illegal immigration from taking place. But because Mexico didn't send a big check up here, you're going, they didn't pay for the wall.
Because that was the promise of Donald Trump. That was the explicit. Yes, it was. That was the explicit thing that Donald Trump said. He never talked anything about having Mexico reimburse us by building camps and holding people across the border. He never talked anything about tariffs being a problem as far as paying for any sort of illegal immigration. He said free wall, and I'm going to hold him to that. Free wall. People chanted it at the rallies. It's a free wall. We don't get no free wall.
Sounds like a rap line. We don't get no free wall.
Sorry, Spencer, continue.
I know you probably got to let me go, but
no, keep going. We got a second.
Instead of having Americans collect $1,000 bounty for turning in illegal immigrants, which, I mean, we're looking for any and every solution we possibly can. Why don't we offer a limited number of modified pathways to citizenship for illegal immigrants who turn in other illegal immigrants? They helped create the problem. Let them help solve the problem.
Yeah,
that's one solution.
That's a good idea.
Gets us out of the McCarthyism style. Inform on your neighbor.
Yeah,
I think that would be a great solution. Obviously, it probably is never going to happen. But I also think that anyone that is deported for illegal immigration should have all of their ill-gotten gains confiscated, and we conveniently have 80,000 new IRS agents that can go after that money and help offset the cost of mass deportation. Because the first crime broken was crossing the border illegally. The second crime was ill-gotten gains, earning income illegally, tax evasion. And a lot of these illegal immigrants come here to take advantage of this country that we have all contributed in building, to send that money through Western Union back to where they wish they could be. In my opinion,
some of it, Spencer,
I don't feel like they want to come here to be American.
They do send some of it home, but they do have to buy things and pay for things here. And there are a large number of, and again, I don't know what portion of the pie of illegal immigrants, but there is a large portion of them that are here on fake Social Security numbers. So they are working and having taxes taken out of their check for Social Security and other government services that they will never use. I'm not saying that makes it okay, but the idea that they don't also contribute into the commerce is not necessarily correct. And the problem I think we have with the idea of saying the illegals turning in the illegals is, I think there's a portion of our electorate that will not want any path to amnesty. It's the idea that your original sin was crossing the border. I'm not okay with anything after that. I can't allow you to become an American citizen if your first act is to break the law.
That kind of thinking is what will hold us back. There has to be a compromise. The whole "it's my way or the highway" mentality on everything has to stop. In my belief, there are solutions that benefit everybody. We don't get everything we want on either side, but we get enough of what we need that the problem is solved or is made better. And this constant "it's my way or the highway" approach, whether you're conservative or left, has to stop.
And I would agree with you that I think on the left, their argument always is mass amnesty. And that is their dumb argument. And that's their my way or the highway argument that they've got that I think is intractable. And they need to come to an understanding and a reasonable conclusion about how that is just not possible. It's not something we're going to be able to accomplish in this country.
I agree. And Billy, last thing,
yeah,
on a side note, that FBI just released a report of assets on the ground January 6th. I'd love to hear you comment on that when you have time.
Yeah. And yeah, you do it real quickly, and I appreciate the call, Spencer. The assets were not employed by the FBI. They were confidential human informants. So that's the idea of the guy inside of a gang or inside of an organization that is turning information, allowing you to have information. Some of the Proud Boys were the confidential human informants that were there during that day. Didn't mean they weren't doing the crimey stuff. It also didn't mean that the FBI sent them there and told them to do the stuff. So
yeah, but I think part of the claim coming from Liz Cheney and the others was that there was no FBI involvement in January 6th. And you're like, well, you had a lot of informants there. So claiming that claiming that there was no involvement and that concerns about the FBI being involved were conspiracy theories was wrong.
But confidential human informants are not the FBI being involved. They are not employed by the FBI. They're not members of the FBI. They're not FBI.
Well,
they're not.
It's the FBI directly involved. You have a confidential informant involved in that activity.
But
yes, you're involved.
The reason they're confidential informants is because they're already involved in the groups and the organizations, and now they're talking. They're becoming an information line to the FBI. They're not employed by the FBI. They're not part of the FBI. And also in this report, we see no information that said because remember the conclusion is that the FBI sent them there to do this, and there's nothing in that report that shows anything along that line, and we're jumping to the conclusion that because there was a confidential human informant there.
I was just saying the FBI was involved.
No, they're not. FBI does not employ confidential human informants. That's a different type of a relationship. They're not employed by the FBI.
So going back to this wall in Mexico thing, okay, this is what Trump said back in 2019. Okay, when I said Mexico is paying for the wall in front of thousands and thousands of people, obviously they're not going to write a check, he told reporters on Thursday. They're paying for the wall indirectly many, many times over by the really great trade deal we just made. So just pointing that out. All right.
He did say something about a giant check, and he said they pay us too. And
he also qualified it and said, it's not a giant check. It's the trade deal.
Yeah. After he couldn't get his giant check.
Oh my gosh.
Because he said giant check. The promise running up to it was giant check. Was they were going to pay for it. And then when he couldn't get the money, he had to say trade deal. He never once in the campaign trail said, we're going to do this great trade deal.
Do you really think that people thought that Mexico was going to write a giant check for a northern border wall?
They voted for it and said yes. So now the issue is...
I always looked at it indirectly through the trade deals. All right, we'll get to the phone lines in here. Billy, you've got some Balanced Well Space to tell the good folks of Colorado.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about an amazing medical team that I've been working with, one that has taken away my daily pain. You know how you wake up early in the morning and sometimes you sit there in the bed and you're like, okay, I got to warm up before I get out of bed. Yeah, I used to have those mornings, especially on the weekends after doing the work around the house. And there are also some things in your life that you've stopped doing. Some things you might have been doing with the kids or grandkids, or even going out and hanging out with your friends. Maybe you don't go to, that meeting, that, group downtown, or maybe you don't go to the bar as often because of the stairs you have to navigate or other things that are hurting. I want you to talk to my friends at Balanced Well Space. Check them out at balancedwellspace.com. Brand new to the Denver area. New offices in Lowry, right across from Hangar 2. Plenty of parking. And look for those shady trees that I like. I was there the other day, had to park under my favorite shady tree. It was nice and open. I hate coming back to the hot car. You feel me? Okay, now let's get back to this. Here's the difference with Balanced Well Space. Integrated medicine. It's about getting chiropractic care, physical rehabilitation, wave therapy, trigger point injections, regenerative care, neuropathic care, and so many more cutting edge things. I don't have a list long enough that there's not time to read all the stuff they do. But it's like Star Trek level stuff that's all non-invasive, that uses your body's own healing properties in order to make yourself better. They just kind of push it in the right direction based on science and technology. No cutting, no sewing. They're not taking you apart or putting you back together. They're using your body and medical technology to help heal your pain. It's simply amazing. I used to have constant lower back pain. Don't have it anymore. My sciatica is completely gone. The weakness and trembling I would get down my right leg is gone. My left knee is now my strong knee. That's ridiculous. I've got a torn meniscus there, and as we're talking, I'm regenerating the meniscus in my left knee. The stuff that they've done in my bum right shoulder that I broke over 25 years ago, it's a nasty, nasty scar. They took away all of the built up scar tissue that was inside that joint, so I don't have that deep, throbbing pain that I used to. If I slept wrong or I did something wrong with my shoulder, it has a thing where it's like that pain 2 to 3 inches deep inside your joint where it just aches all day. That's gone because of what they were able to accomplish. And I want them to make the same change in your life. What you got to do is reach out to my friends, Dr. Julie, Dr. Jess, and the entire team through balancedwellspace.com. Balancedwellspace.com. Set up a personal medical evaluation. They'll go through all the pain points you got, do some tests, and then ask you, most importantly, where do you want to get? What are the goals? And they go to work. Every couple of weeks, they reevaluate your care. That's the difference that you're going to experience at Balanced Well Space, because your current medical team isn't talking to each other. They don't every couple of weeks get on a conference call and see what your care is like and make sure they're all rowing in the same direction. But Balanced Well Space meets in a single room and talks about you every few weeks. to make sure you're getting to your goals. It's different, and I want you to experience that difference, just like I have. Check them out, balancewellspace.com, balancewellspace.com. Experience the same change in your life that I have, courtesy of their great care. balancewellspace.com. And when you reach out, tell me you heard about them here on the Jeff and Bill Show, because we sure do appreciate it. They're great people.
That's great to hear, Bill. We'll continue. Phone lines are filling up. We do got an open one. Give us a call, 303-696-1971. I think the original question, would you turn in an illegal alien for a $1,000 bounty? Missouri lawmaker wants to make that a law. We'll continue the conversation. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
At this hour, I'm Christina Owayo in Dallas, and here are your top stories.
People who have become obsessed with the alleged United Healthcare CEO killer, Luigi Mangione, are now tattooing his face on their bodies. Multiple accounts on social media have started posting pictures of their new ink, showing off tats honoring the 26-year-old murder suspect. This not even 2 weeks after Mangione allegedly shot and killed 50-year-old Brian Thompson in Manhattan. Some of the images feature pics from surveillance cameras that circulated before his arrest of the hooded gunman. His image inside of a heart alongside the phrase, quote, "I heart my boyfriend." Others pay tribute to the message left on bullets at the scene of the crime: deny, defend, depose. President Donald Trump saying the people that are idolizing this alleged killer are suffering from a sickness.
I think it's really terrible that some people seem to admire him, like him. And I was happy to see that it wasn't specific to this gentleman that was killed. It's just an overall sickness as opposed to a specific sickness. That was a terrible thing. It was cold-blooded, just a cold-blooded, horrible killing. And how people can like this guy is... that's a sickness, actually. That's really very bad.
That's what you need to know at this hour. In Dallas, Christina Owayo, Salem News Channel.
to the Jeff and Bill Show. We're talking bounties. Would you turn in an illegal immigrant for a $1,000 bounty? Well, there's a Missouri lawmaker.
We're not talking about cool bounties like the bounty hunters in Star Wars or nothing.
Right.
No.
Hey, there's a citizen. And you could just roll on down to Home Depot with your 15-passenger van, load them in, drive them over to ICE, and just collect, quite a bit of money.
Yeah, you could.
Well, $14,000, $15,000 if you filled up the whole thing. So is this gonna create a big problem where people with brown skin are just gonna be stopped on the sidewalk? Show me your papers, or I'm gonna turn you into the ICE. Or is this going to empower local citizens with mass deportations that the American people want to take place? Let's go to the phone lines. Ron, you're on the Jeff and Bill Show. Good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen. Hey, I think the whole subject seems to be centered around accountability. You now want me to turn in somebody for $1,000. How come ICE isn't given the tools to do the job they should be doing? Be accountable. Jeff, last week you said the numbers are down for the Republican Party because of the independent and unaffiliated voters.
Yeah.
Where's the accountability for Republicans have been off the mark for a while? How come our government, I'll start
I
with
was putting the accountability with the unaffiliated because they're the ones voting in big numbers to put Democrats into office.
Well, 40 years ago, I was asked when I registered to vote, am I going to be a Democrat or a Republican? I said, what are my other options? I didn't like the idea of having to fit in that box.
Yeah.
So I've always been an independent voter. Now,
and so I'm putting the accountability with you guys.
Well, the Democrats aren't being accountable. You mentioned in the last week, we need to make the government more accountable.
Yes.
How? Make the government accountable by saying, this year we want you to cut the budget by 10%. Everybody all the way across the board gets the budget cut 10%.
I like that idea.
It starts with the leadership. The mayor, the governor says, I'll cut my salary by 10%. I'll cut my staff by 10% so I can show the people we're being accountable. We're not being accountable. The city and county of Denver passed an ordinance here in the last month that says it's illegal to sell flavored vape to teenagers.
Yeah, it happened last night.
Go back to the book of laws, the rule of laws that says you're not allowed to sell them any tobacco until they're 18.
Well, they actually yesterday, Ron, they banned all flavored tobacco, period, from the city of Denver. So even if you're over the age of 18 or 20 or 40, you can't buy it anymore in Denver.
But we're not being accountable. We're passing it on to somebody else.
Yeah.
Don't sell tobacco of any kind to 18 and under.
Ron, do you think
punish everybody else?
Do you think that the state would be empowering individuals? I mean, I know ICE wants to do a lot, especially under Tom Hillman, to address illegal immigration. But do you think that they would be empowering accountability? If your neighbor's an illegal immigrant, it's your job to turn him in.
Jeff, why are you holding me accountable to rat out my neighbor when the government's not even being accountable?
Maybe they just don't have the resources.
Exactly. Because of why? There's no accountability.
Okay.
The governor stepped in all over the legal system when he forgave that guy or reduced the guy's sentence for driving a semi.
Yeah.
Remember that? Caused great grief, but no accountability.
But why is the accountability only on the government, Ron? Why isn't it on the citizens? We're a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So shouldn't the people be holding each other accountable? Why do I have to wait for an elected official to do it?
Because we haven't been able to hold our government officials accountable. They've run rampant.
Yeah.
For example, our government said we're going to do a late fee for $25 a month for 4 months if you don't renew your tags on time. That money was going to go to pave the roads, road improvement. What happened to that? I don't know where the governor drives, but on the highway I'm on, it's full of potholes.
Yeah, no,
but
you're
guess
right.
what? You still see people on that highway driving with tags that are 24, 48 months fired. There's
From
no
like
accountability.
2016. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
Ron, I appreciate the call. And look, I agree with you that our elected officials should be held accountable, but I also think that we, the people, could hold each other accountable. And I wonder if the bounty is an effort to do that. All right, I want to talk to you about my friends over at Advanced Hair Restoration. Let's talk about your hair. If you're losing it and desire to have it back, then Advanced Hair Restoration has the easiest guaranteed solution. Their simple one-day treatment offers life-changing results. I've seen it with my own eyes. Guys, it's not magic, but close to it. They put hair where you need it the most, and bam, it grows. It's actually science. Advanced Hair has it all. Top-rated Dr. Tanya Pauls, modern technology, and best of all, you get your very own natural hair that begins regrowing the very next day. Advanced Hair even guarantees it to grow for life. So schedule your free consultation now at 720-459-HAIR, 720-459-HAIR. If you qualify, you get $250 off and 250 free hair grafts. Advanced Hair is the winner of Westward's Best of Denver and has changed the lives of tens of thousands of people. I've had my family members get their hair done, and it changed everything about them. Every relationship in their life improved because it brought back a youthfulness and an energy. Their work improved, family life improved, dating improved, all that just by getting their hair done. Advanced Hair. Don't wait. Check out the before and afters online at advancedhair.com. That's 720-459-HAIR or advancedhair.com. All right. Speaking of accountability, Wall Street Journal out with this. As the Supreme Court ponders whether Tennessee may ban transgender treatments for adolescents, it's worth reading a medical negligence lawsuit that was filed in California last week, a day after the justice's oral arguments. Clementine Bren, now a 20-year-old UCLA student, alleges that she was fast-tracked to puberty blockers at the age of 12, male hormones at 13, and a double mastectomy at 14. Around the age of 11 or 12, likely due, at least in part, to the sexual abuse she experienced as a young child, Clementine began struggling with the thought of developing into a woman and began to believe that life would be easier if she were a boy, the lawsuit says. Her parents decided to take Clementine to the experts, which led them to the Center for Trans Youth Health Development at the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles. At first consultation, at the first one, the complaint says the doctor immediately and unquestioningly affirmed Clementine as transgender, recommending surgical implantation of puberty blockers. Ms. Breen alleges misrepresentations were used to convince Clementine's parents to agree, including statements like puberty blockers are completely reversible and that Clementine would commit suicide if she did not begin taking testosterone. As a result, they are now suing her physicians and the institutions in state court. Hospitals declined to comment. I saw this coming a mile away. I mean, if we're suing over tobacco use and advertisement and promotion from tobacco companies, even to adults, to hold them liable for the harm caused by consuming tobacco, of course, this society would hold doctors and trans health and development institutions accountable when those kids got older and felt like they were forced or coerced into the wrong decisions. Bill, you think these lawsuits are warranted or not?
In some cases, yeah, I think so, but not in all cases. And they are a minority of the people's experiences. The thing for me is that I do agree that at this point, I can be persuaded to go to the other side. But right now, I agree that I don't see a reason for minors to have this type of surgery, in part because they are still developing not only physically, but mentally and emotionally. And just like I am against having surgery like, certain types of plastic surgery, certain augmentations and changing in bodies, regardless if you're heterosexual or homosexual under the age of 18. I think that is something that if it's not medically necessary, and by medically necessary, I mean because of a condition that is in your body, something that is not, and I would not put being transgendered in that classification personally. That's not what I would label it as, even though I do think it's inherent to who you are. I don't think it's a medical condition that has to be dealt with surgery under the age of 18.
If these kids are transgender, I'm just going to play the devil's advocate here. If these kids are trans and we're now going to force, and I put that around terms, force them to go through puberty.
Yeah.
And it's going to change their bodies permanently.
Yeah.
Resulting in having to get surgery later in life. Shouldn't we just give them puberty blockers right now?
Yeah. The thing is, the puberty blockers and stuff for me is a little bit different than the actual surgery, because when you talk about cutting and adding parts or taking stuff off, that's different. The puberty blockers, I want to have some constraints on them, and I would love to have more medical testing, because it seems like there have been some either misunderstanding or some wrong studies about what the puberty blockers can and can't do. And I think long-term effects of that should be explored. Here's the thing, that the core of it is, I think the solution is honestly fairly simple, but is so simple that it is difficult, because we as a society are not willing, ready, or able to do it. The simple answer is to accept them as who they are. Don't push them into having prescriptions and medication that will cut off puberty or change levels of estrogen or testosterone. That we accept them being transgender and stop telling them what bathrooms they can and can't use, and stop telling them they can't dress a certain way in public and I don't want to see you. If there was larger acceptance, I think there's less of a push to make sure I look like the gender that I need to present as, because if I don't, I'm not going to be accepted. And the example being that I push is the first transgender member of Congress that we have. And she's showing up. She's now part of this 500 plus governing body. And her coworkers, the first thing they do is make sure she can't use a particular bathroom. That's what was most important. To tell the first person that's a transgender lawmaker what bathroom is okay. How would you feel if you showed up at your place of employment? The very first thing they have to outline is what bathrooms you can and can't use. And they make a rule about it because of you and your workspace. You can't use this bathroom. How do you look at your coworkers? How do you feel about that group of people that you now have to work with? That's the reason I don't think that these kids would be looking for these type of chemical and surgical changes if they were just allowed to be who they are. It's us.
Yeah, I see it differently, as you can imagine. Welcome to the Jeff and Bill show, where we debate things left, right, and center. So on this, I think that there's been an entire scheme set up to make a lot of money off of confused kids. And we're seeing elements of doctors blowing whistles in places like Texas going, these kids shouldn't be getting the surgeries. They shouldn't be getting the medications, but there's a lot of money to be made. So these doctors are pushing them into it. I think, too, that there's a lot of evidence that kids outgrow this as they get older, gender dysphoria. And so to do both hormone and surgery amounts to child abuse, in my opinion, on both the parents and the doctors that are doing this. And I am glad that some of these folks that are getting older, looking back at what they were pushed into either by their parents or these doctors or both, as a form of child abuse, are suing in order to try to prevent this from happening to kids in the future. So I think there's an entire scheme made up to make money here. It's awful. It needs to be confronted. I'm glad these detransitioners later in life are doing it. I think they're heroes. And if you're a doctor participating in this, you better get ready, because it's coming down the pike for you. And there's going to be plenty of lawsuits, and you deserve it. That's where I stand on this. But we'd love to hear from folks. Give us a call. Should these doctors be sued? Are they doing good work trying to help these kids transition to be their, quote, true, authentic selves? Or are they just child abusers profiting off of confused kids, and they deserve to be sued into the ground? Phone lines are open, 303-696-1971, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line 720-820. 720-819-5115. 720-819-5115. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
We are Denver's talk leader, News Talk US.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Wall Street Journal over the weekend. The trans double mastectomy lawsuit. Clementine Green's story of regretful surgery at age 14 is noteworthy as the Supreme Court starts to weigh in. You know, there's that discussion as to whether or not Tennessee could ban transgender treatments for adolescents. The Biden administration coming to the defense and saying, yes, of course, we can trans our youth. But there's a growing series of lawsuits in other states towards these doctors. I think it's a good thing. I think they're taking advantage of confused young people, and they should be sued out of existence. If we can sue these tobacco companies for having a Marlboro man ride a horse around, well, then, yes, a doctor that performs permanent life-altering surgeries on a minor in an effort to trans them, and that person later in life feels like they were coerced and pushed into this by people they trusted in their lives, then yes, absolutely, they should be sued into the ground, lose their license. But Bill, you raised an interesting question.
Yeah, the question I've got is, I want to know, what would you, listening, do if your son, daughter, grandson, granddaughter, niece, nephew came to you and said they were trans? How would you deal with that? What would be the process? Is it something where, no, you can't be, we can't do things like this, and it's not allowed, or it's a mental contagion or social contagion? What's the care, and what process do you think they should go through, and how or what types of support would you provide? And I think that's part of the problem here, is that I believe that I agree with you on some of the doctors, not all of them, but some of the doctors pushing it because of the profit motive. I can absolutely see that. I'm not as convinced that parents are necessarily doing it, because I still think that the parents do have the best interests of their child. However, and I hate to bring this in again, but when we're going through the school board issues and people talking about the DEI and the wokeness inside the schools, the argument always was, well, parents know best for their kids. But we're arguing here the parents didn't know best for their kids, saying that it was coercion. So it has to be, we can't have it both ways, or maybe it's somewhere different in the middle, that sometimes parents know best and sometimes the parents don't know best. And we've got to really be honest with ourselves about that. And I'm super curious how you would deal with it, what you would do if someone in your life, and it could even be just a friend or the son or daughter of a friend that came to you and said this. How do you possibly deal with it? And is a solution things like going through puberty blockers, and is it things surgery? And I would disagree with surgery on minors, but if you're of age, that's kind of a difficult question. Like, how are the parents going to be responsible for this if they're trying to support what their son or daughter is saying?
Do you think you're acknowledging that there's not a permanence to trans when you're saying that we should wait till later in life? Because once they've gone through puberty, that's a permanent change in somebody's body. Are we admitting that it's not as important to their identity as we think?
That's good. That's a really, really good question. Saying, I don't think it's the issue of not admitting or not saying it's as important to their identity. I think that you don't need to take such drastic steps. I think there are ways to support their transgender identity without cutting things off or putting things on. I think there are better ways to do that, in part because of the trauma that involves in someone's body. And I'm just talking about surgery. And so that's where I really push back at it. And I also know that I have 4 kids. Kids change their mind. And I know that there are going to be some people out there that feel they are trans that end up not. And there are some that aren't right now that are going to recognize it later on in life.
Join the conversation. Give us a call at 303-696-1971. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
We are Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS. What would you do?
It is 9 a.m. in the Mile High City. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show. News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights, hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Congratulations. You're heading to work in the greatest country in history. Let's get it started. We got a whole hour planned for you of engaging discussions, critical analysis, but most importantly, your phone calls and texts, because this is where Denver's voice is heard loud and clear. So grab a cup of coffee, Denver. Let's dive into the issues that matter most to you right here, right now. Coming up in just a minute, Mark Hillman. You know the name, former state treasurer, former president of the Senate Majority Leader, top Republican down at the Senate for years, has got a new article out, really good one about this ain't your father's Colorado anymore. If you're 40 or older, today's Colorado is very different politically than the state you grew up in, assuming you grew up here. He's going to give us some insight into what has happened to Colorado and what we could do to turn it back around.
Yeah, it's
not
so
going to
cool.
win this conversation. Yeah. So
it is. It's one of those that anybody's a longtime resident, even if you've only been here for like 25, 30 years, even 2 decades, you've seen things change. Now, what is, some of the causation of that? What are some of the results of that? And we're going to talk about the who, what, when, where, why, and how with Mark Hillman. This is going to be cool.
Absolutely. Mark's always, and plus he's a farmer, man. And I just love it when farmers, they provide some good wisdom.
Yes, they do.
So Mark will be joining us. Here's an interesting news story breaking about Aurora, Colorado. Adam, producer, just sent it to us. This happened really early this morning. Aurora, Colorado police detained 14 in connection with armed home invasion and kidnapping. Home invasion occurred at the Edge at Lowry Apartments, where viral video showed gang members earlier this year. Police in Aurora, Colorado say they have detained 14 people following an armed home invasion at a local apartment complex just before 2:30 a.m. on Tuesday. That's about the time Bill and I get up.
Yes,
close to. Police were called to the Edge at Lowry Apartments in the 1200 block of Dallas for, quote, a report of an armed home invasion involving stabbing and kidnapping.
Wow.
A press release from Aurora Police said, Fox News reporting, according to the police, a preliminary investigation showed that several suspects entered an apartment where 2 people were inside. Police say the suspects took the victims to another apartment at the same location where the victims were threatened and bound. Wow. One of the victims, a man, sustained a stab wound but he's expected to survive. Some point, authorities said the suspects released the victims, who then ran and called 911.
Oof.
The Edge at a Lowry Apartments is the location of the viral video from late summer of armed TDA members concerned about code violations. Oh, no, sorry. In the stairwell and hallways.
That was good. Nicely done.
Other news agencies reporting that there was no TDA gang violence, just code violations.
Yeah, and just those are people that wear sport coats. We don't do that.
As of Tuesday morning, police have not confirmed any connections between the home invasion and TDA. Just at
that's important.
Just at the same apartment complex.
But it's important we don't jump to conclusions that they're necessarily TDA gang members. Obviously there's something illegal involved here.
Yes.
Could be something local that as far as gang members, it could be something different. And it could be a different gang of illegals that is not TDA. It could be something completely and totally different.
That's right.
But anyway, they are criminals. And because of the concentration of previous criminal activity there, got a lot of questions. And this could be even something, I mean, again, if we want to play, let's pretend for a little while, if we were going to go write some sort of movie script, this could be a rival gang coming in and pushing in on 2 other gang members that could be there. Maybe the people that had the original home invasion whose home was broken into are gang members and they're taking over territory, and that's where they're taken out. But I'm curious about the taking them out of the original apartment and taking them to another one. Yeah, I think that's interesting because it means the large group of people that were there to do the home invasion do have a base of operations or an open apartment they can get to inside the complex. So there is going to be some strings we can pull to figure out who they are, why they're there. And again, they had somewhere to take them inside the apartment complex. That for me is the most interesting part and probably going to tell us the most about who, when, where, why, and why this happened stuff. Yeah, this is going to be crazy. We'll follow this.
Dog the Bounty Hunter would be a good one to send in there for those bounties.
I would agree. The thing is,
normal citizens should not be going after the 14 if they're here illegally. We don't know. But part of the conversation we were having earlier is there's a Missouri lawmaker who wants $1,000 per illegal immigrant bounty.
Yeah, he does. And there's a part of the law in which he wants to almost like deputize bounty hunters and security officers in order to go after them. And for me, I could get there on that one. Because there would be
dough,
some,
big bad dough.
There's some things about the process they have to go through and the legalities of what they do. And I know they break rules and stuff sometime, but they're held to a little bit of a different standard than just you or I.
Yeah.
So I can maybe get there on that one where the individual, it's a nightmare.
Did you ever watch bounty hunter shows?
I watched some of them.
Yeah. I got into it.
Oh yeah.
And what was hilarious is eventually, you run out of the people that are really trying to escape.
Yeah.
And you just go after the people who didn't even know they had a warrant.
Yeah, and you're just showing up somewhere and they're like, what?
Right, they're having like a picnic.
Yeah. You're like, pardon me.
Get out. You know, all that stuff, chasing after them. And they're like, I was just out for a stroll.
Exactly. And that's boring TV because, you know, it all started with the cops genre and that TV show. And if they just showed up and the guy's sitting there like, what? Oh, okay. That's not a fun show. You know, it's when they were running away in their underwear. That's when the show is fun.
Well,
speaking of running away in underwear,
we'll continue to track the 14 detained in connection with armed home invasion at the edge of the Lowry Apartments. Breaking news happened very early this morning. Does Colorado continue to have an illegal immigration problem, even with the world's attention? Is Aurora still dealing with all these problems? And you put that at the feet of Mike Kaufman, Jared Polis, the rest of them. We'll get into that and more. And coming up here in just a second, Mark Hillman's going to join us on This Ain't Your Father's Colorado Anymore. But first, news and comment with Blake Olson. Good morning, Blake.
Hey, good morning, Jeff and Billy. Thank you for that. 34 and cloudy in Denver, expecting a high of 52 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story, the Senate has passed the Stop Institutional Child Abuse Act. The bill, which will now move to the House, establishes oversight of the health and welfare of foster youth in treatment programs and residential placements. Paris Hilton has championed the bill and went to Capitol Hill this week to urge the House to quickly pass the bill. Madison, Wisconsin police say the family of Monday's school shooter is cooperating as they work to determine a motive. A 15-year-old girl killed a teacher and a student and injured 6 others at Abundant Life Christian School before police say she turned the gun on herself. A document posted online that may be connected to the shooter is being processed by police. How can we try to prevent this? Well, I agree with caller Brian on this one.
There's a metal detector and a security guard standing there waiting for you with one entry point. You can't sneak in around the courthouse and go in a back door and take out a judge and one of your enemies who's up for trial. So we can protect, congressmen. We can protect those people simply with a metal detector.
How about students in schools? I agree, Brian. The White House says there is no national security threat from recent drone sightings in the Northeast. White House National No Security Council spokesman John Kirby said the rash of drone sightings is due to drones that are legally and lawfully in the air. DJT.
Our military knows where they took off from. If it's a garage, they can go right into that garage. They know where it came from and where it went. And for some reason, they don't want to comment. And I think they'd be better off saying what it is. Our military knows and our president knows. And for some reason, they want to keep people in suspense. I can't imagine it's the enemy, because if it was the enemy, they'd blast it out. Even if they were late, they'd blast it. Something strange is going on. For some reason, they don't want to tell the people, and they should, because the people are really, they happen to be over Bedminster.
They're
very
That's
close
his
to
golf
Bedminster.
course.
I think maybe I won't spend the weekend in Bedminster. I've decided to cancel my trip.
Now, that was called an actual presidential press conference. We haven't seen one of those in about 4 years. 47 was outstanding. Trump also said that he may step in and stop Congress's potential ban on TikTok. He said TikTok may be a big reason why he won the youth vote in the election. Under federal law, TikTok must cut ties with its Chinese parent company by mid-January or be banned in the United States. Trump is also suing that Iowa pollster. The lawsuit filed on Monday night in Polk County, Iowa, names Ann Seltzer, our favorite, and her polling firm in the lawsuit, the Des Moines Register, and Gannett, the newspaper's parent company. Business will now be required.
Blake,
Yes.
do you know what the lawsuit's on terms of?
I don't. I just saw it come across right before I started talking, and it's the November 2nd poll, I believe.
Yeah.
Is
I'm
that
just
right?
wondering what on what grounds?
I think just let's see. Ann Seltzer polling from.
I'm looking it up too here.
Trump is suing over the November 2nd poll by Seltzer that showed Vice President Harris with a 3-point lead in Iowa. The lawsuit claims that the poll violated
campaign finance. Yeah, intended to artificially help Democrats during the campaign. So if you're using, and we can't do this, even as a station here, I can't basically turn my platform into campaign promotion. We can discuss, we can talk, but this is not a vehicle by which to try to advance a particular candidate. So I think the lawsuit is that this newspaper was basically using this poll as an effort to help Democrats illegally, and therefore should be reported as a campaign contribution.
I remember when she came out that day, and we had it on here, and you talked about it. I think Billy did too as well. But he's going after him. I love it. Business will now be required to display the full true price for hotels and event tickets. The FTC finalized a bipartisan rule today that bans hidden junk fees on those items. All right, Heisman Trophy winner Travis Hunter, CU's all-around athlete, defending his fiance's action over the weekend on social media. Stop this. Forget the clowns in the chat room, please, and keep your private life private. Here it is.
You ain't never had no girl, so why y'all talking about me? Find something else to talk about. You talk about my girl. Go talk about your girl. Go find a girl. Go find a life. Stop worrying about what I got going on. I know what I got. I know my girl. My girl been with me for 5 years. Y'all are just not starting to talk about me and just not starting to be with me. Like, come on, man. Y'all go do something else with y'all life. Clickbait pages, y'all better stop. I'm telling y'all. It's something bad gonna happen to y'all. Y'all keep doing that. Y'all better stop that. I ain't playing. Y'all better stop. All the clickbaiting pages, y'all trying to make everything. Y'all want everything for clicks. Like, stop that. That's
Travis, this is Dr. Phil. And here's the thing. You're going to be a millionaire. Don't worry about them people. All right, that wasn't Dr. Phil, shocker there, but I'm sure Dion's advising him not to do this. But man, there's just too much inside video on these guys. Not good for your marriage if you're going to marry this young lady. Great that you're going to do it, but just forget about him, Travis. Forget about him. Do what MJ did. Let a PR firm take care of it. It's 30 in Lafayette. 31 in Englewood, 34 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue Tuesday morning. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
A Pacific cold front will be racing through the region today. The impacts on Denver will be minimal, however. The high country will see some snow today and into the evening, but Denver and the Front Range will generally be partly to mostly cloudy. Highs upper 40s and low 50s, becoming windy this afternoon, and you may feel it turning a bit colder by late afternoon and evening, and lows tonight in the lower to middle 20s. Partly cloudy and dry with highs in the 50s Wednesday through Friday, with overnight lows 20s and 30s. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. We're going to get to Mark Hillman here in just a second. Jack's been waiting on the phone. Jack, thanks so much for your patience. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Morning.
Hey, good morning. Is Mark on? Mark Hillman? I know Mark.
Yeah.
Is he going to?
He's going to be joining us here in just a second.
Does he have pheasants? Does he have good number? I've hunted pheasants on his father's and mother's farm for years. Tell him I'm ready to come up there.
That's awesome. Well, he'll be joining us in a second. We'll ask him that question. Yeah. What's on your mind, Jack?
I wish he'd get back in politics. I really, really like Mark very, very much, and he's kind of been removed from it. But anyway, that's not why I called. What's this home invasion crap in Aurora? What's this all about? Let me tell you something. You break down send them to my house. You break down my door, you got one between the eyes. I guarantee you. And I'm an excellent, not just peasants. I'm an excellent shot. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a lack of policing. It's allowing these folks to just run rampant. What's wild to me though is that literally the nation's eyes have been upon these apartment complexes. The president of the United States came to Aurora to talk about them, and we still have problems with them.
Well, you got serious problem with the politics in Denver, the Democrats. I mean, but this thing with let me jump to this. This thing with this last win that Trump had in court, and it basically is election interference. It all is. All of this stuff, all these lawsuits against him. That is just started. Wait till you see what this turns into. It's going to be one win after another win. The lawsuits that Donald Trump can advance based on the way he was treated in the last couple of years is immense. And not only when he wins the lawsuits, he can come back for a malicious prosecution after that. And that's the networks. It's whatever the particular people on the air, the personalities did personally. I mean, I wish I had a law firm that could represent
now, Jack,
it all.
Do you think though that will chill the political targeting that they've gone after Donald Trump, like for instance ABC, others, or do you think it's just going to inspire him to fight more?
No, it has to. It has to be corrected, and the only way you can correct stuff like this is to penalize them, and the only way to penalize them is through the court system.
Yeah.
We got to, at some point, we got to stand up and say, are we a nation of men or are we a nation of laws? And it's way do you see all the wins that Donald Trump gets in the future?
Definitely not.
I'm telling you,
definitely not laws.
What's that?
No, definitely not a nation of laws. Definitely not.
I've lost you.
Well, you were saying stand up. Are we a nation of men or a nation of laws? And I'm saying not laws. That's not the side that's going to win.
No. Okay, so we're not a nation of laws. Billy, I would expect something like that from you.
I know you would. That's why I handed it to you. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. But the intention of the founding fathers is to be a nation of laws, not men. Okay?
Yeah.
Do you disagree with that?
No, I don't disagree with that, but that's not where we are anymore.
Okay, should we return to that?
Yeah, we should, but we're not.
Okay, how do we return to that, Billy?
By enforcing laws, but
No.
Yeah.
We return to that by penalizing them in the court system.
Yeah,
we got to sue the butts off.
I know, except if we disagree and think that the lawsuits and everything are politicized, and then we excuse them and we say that the juries and the grand juries and everything else were totally wrong and all set up and controlled, and then we make excuses and then we say we need revenge, and so we're not. It's men, because you started that explanation about discounting other court rulings that have been found against Trump, and I would guess, I'm just guessing, you would think those are disingenuous and wrong. So this is men. You've come to the conclusion already of men, not laws. That's okay.
I'm not following you, man, but the law doesn't stop at the trial level. It goes through the appellate level. So,
I know.
These issues have not been. What I'm telling you is Trump's not going to just have the win he just had. It's the beginning of a series of these, and this country needs it desperately to stop this activity.
I sure hope it is.
Yeah,
Jack, thanks so much for the call.
But I don't think the win he's talking about was in court, though, because if he's talking about the Stephanopoulos defamation, that's a settlement. It's not a win in court. He didn't win anything in court. Again, just like Fox News didn't go to court and decided to pay nearly $800 million. Yeah, same thing. Those are settlements. It's not necessarily being held accountable by the law. So, I love Jack.
Well, we're going to take Jack's question and ask Mark Hillman now. Mark joins us, former state treasurer, former Senate majority leader. He's got a great piece out at his website, markhillman.com. This ain't your father's Colorado. Senator Hillman, Treasurer Hillman, thanks so much for joining the Jeff and Bill Show.
Yeah, morning.
Boy, it is not your father's Colorado, is it?
Not at all.
Well, I mean, speaking of your father, how many you got pheasants up there still? Jack wanted to know.
There's a few, not as many as I'd like. We were really dry the last half of summer and a little bit of hail, and those are not good combinations. So I wish I could tell you it's fantastic pheasant hunting this year. There are a few, but you've got to be diligent and a little bit lucky to find them.
That's great. Well, I appreciate the update on that. Let's dive into This Ain't Your Father's Colorado, your latest piece at markhillman.com. What you talking about, Mark?
Just how much the state of Colorado has changed over the last 20 or 25 years, from back, say, in 2000, the first election that George W. Bush won, and I think he won it by a little over 8%. And at that point, we were still considered to be a swing state, but it tended to be Republican. In fact, prior to that, you have to go back 50 years, and the only Democrat that got more than 45% after 1952 until Barack Obama in 2008 was Lyndon Johnson over Barry Goldwater. In every other presidential election in Colorado, Democrats got 45% or less. Even when Bill Clinton won Colorado in 1992, he got 40% in the three-way race that included George H.W. Bush and Ross Perot, where the conservative vote got about 60%. That just was divided between the two.
Now, Mark Hillman, I want to ask you about Barack Obama in 2008, because that was the kind of moment it changed. And Democrats, I think, were smart enough to make the DNC convention here in Colorado, even though George W. Bush had won the last two presidentials. They saw a turning tide. They invested in Colorado. For the most part, there hasn't been an RNC convention anywhere in the Western United States, I think, since Bob Dole was the nominee in 96 in San Diego. But Democrats invested here. Barack Obama was, at the time, compared to John McCain, kind of a cooler candidate. Colorado's always been kind of a young, youthful state. Do you think that played into it? Why do you think things changed so much starting around 2008 in the state?
I think a lot of it is simply Colorado's prosperity. After the 2004 election, the second time that George W. Bush won, I didn't think about this at the time until I started writing this and went back and did a little research. Bush went from 2000, when he won the Electoral College, but narrowly lost the popular vote. 2004, he wins the popular vote too, so I think he expanded his margin by about 2.5% nationwide. But in Colorado, instead of expanding his margin, it was cut almost in half, from a little over 8% to just under 5%. And in that election, also, the Democrats won control of the state house and the state senate, while Bush was carrying Colorado nationwide. So I think that 2004 election was really the one that was pivotal. And you ask, why did it happen? After the 2016 election, when states like Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and Michigan, which were also considered to be purple states, they went red. Colorado seemed to go more blue. Magellan Strategies, which is a polling firm about a Broomfield, asked that same question, and they looked at counties in Michigan and Wisconsin and in Colorado, and what they found when they looked at the larger, more heavily populated counties was those heavily populated counties that had a lower median income, so we'll call them blue-collar counties. In those counties, Trump in 2016 outperformed Romney in 2012. But in those heavily populated counties where they had a higher median income, in those counties, Trump underperformed Romney. And in Wisconsin and in Michigan, those states had more of those blue-collar counties. Colorado, in some respects, our prosperity may be our undoing as far as partisan elections, because Colorado, more of our heavily populated counties have higher incomes. And so in those counties, Trump did not perform as well as Romney. And yet, when you look at larger blue-collar counties in Colorado, sort of like the exception proves the rule. Pueblo County is a perfect example. It's, for all my life, it's been a Democrat stronghold, very strong blue-collar union community, and Donald Trump won it in 2016, narrowly lost it in 2020, and won it again in 24. And Adams County, which is the has the lowest median income in the Denver metropolitan area, Trump had by far his closest margin in Adams County than any other county in the metropolitan area. So when voters felt like they were missing out on the prosperity that other people were experiencing, they tended to vote for Trump. When they felt like, hey, my life is pretty good, then they didn't have time for Trump and his style, I guess I'll say.
Talking with Mark Hillman, former state treasurer, former Senate majority leader. MarkHillman.com. He's got a piece over there. This Ain't Your Father's Colorado. How much? I've got a few other questions on this. How much does college education, you think, fit into this? Colorado's the top 2 or 3 states in the nation for college education. So we've seen a lot of shift there where college educated people are going more towards Democrats these days.
Yeah, I don't doubt that to be the case. I'll be honest. I'm sure that was in one of the exit polls that I looked at, but it didn't stand out as much as some other things. But certainly, I mean, you're right. Colorado has long boasted that even though we don't fund our own colleges the way they would like to be funded, we seem to import quite a few college graduates and do fairly well that way. But the other thing that struck me as strange was how there are various voting groups that Trump did well with nationwide, like married couples, families with an income of $50,000 to $100,000. Trump wins those nationwide, and yet in Colorado, Harris wins them. So it just shows Colorado is a very peculiar state compared to some of our neighbors.
Talking with Mark Hillman, former state treasurer, former majority leader and minority leader down at the Colorado State Senate. And he's got a new piece out, This Ain't Your Father's Colorado, at markhillman.com. All right. How much, too, at a certain point, do the laws and policies of the state become this kind of center of gravity, right? So marijuana, for instance, passes in 2012. And I remember talking to law enforcement in Utah and Nebraska who said, yeah, we're thrilled you guys passed marijuana legalization because it took all the potheads from our state and they all came to Colorado. So at a certain point, though, the policies become attractive to people. I know plenty of conservatives, Mark Hillman, that, we may have lost Mark. He'll be joining us here in a second. But I know plenty of conservatives that want to head to Oklahoma because the policies, they want to head to Florida because it's the free state of Florida. So the policies of the state draw people. I wonder how much of Colorado's policies at this point are pushing Republicans away and bringing Democrats in. We got Mark Hillman back. Mark, the question I'm asking, how much do the policies that Colorado's implemented have now become a center of gravity to bring Democrats to the state and push Republicans out of the state?
I think there's some of that. I also include Colorado being a leader in an early leader in legalizing marijuana as one of the things that also changed the complexion of our state quite a bit. When I look at those things, I just keep coming back to you look at how different unaffiliated voters or the people who aren't registered as Republican or Democrat are voting in Colorado versus other states. I mean, for example, Harris wins unaffiliated voters by 20% in Colorado. And then another little tidbit that I discovered when I wrote this that I had known before, a little known election that we had at the same time for CU Regent in Colorado. And maybe this gives us a little bit of help. Nobody knows who the candidates for CU Regent are. They don't even really know what the CU Regent does. So really, you're just voting Republican or Democrat. And in that race, while Trump lost Colorado by 11%, the Democrat candidate for CU Regent only won it by 3.9% statewide. So there are clearly some people out there, whether they're Republicans, more likely they're probably unaffiliated Republican leaners who, for whatever reason, they're not crazy about Donald Trump, but you get further down the ballot and they will pull the lever for Republicans. And that's why when you look and see that Republicans are now outnumbered in voter registration, we're outnumbered in turnout in elections, we can't afford as a party, if we want to actually win elections, to have this circular firing squad where we're shooting at each other because, you know, you're not pure enough or I'm not pure enough. We have to pull together all of the Republicans and then find ways to reach outside the tent and bring in other people who just can't stomach progressive Democrat politics and are looking for a rational alternative.
Talking with Mark Hillman, former state treasurer, about his piece, This Ain't Your Father's Colorado, at markhillman.com. Mark, I want to talk to you about the Republican Party. I looked up these numbers a few months ago. We have, even though we've added like 1 million people to the state since 2012, we actually have fewer registered Republicans in our state than we did back then. So lots more people and actually fewer number of registered Republicans. So, what's your advice? You talk about not the circular firing squad. I appreciate, and I think the leadership that I've appreciated the most recently comes from Rose Puglisi, where Rose goes, if we unite, we win. And we're going to have Republicans with different constituencies. The constituency that elects Scott Bottoms, for instance, fiery pastor, also Republican lawmaker, is going to be different than a constituency that elects maybe Dan Woog, for instance, and Dan ousted a Democrat in his seat. So, you know, what does the nature of uniting to win look like?
I think we have to decide by asking ourselves fundamentally, do we want to rule a party that is so small that it's otherwise irrelevant, but the people who have the upper hand in the party, you know, are kingmakers in a very, very small kingdom? Or do we actually want to turn the state around and agree that electing any Republican is better than electing a Democrat? And when we're dealing with majorities in the legislature where the Democrats in each the House and the Senate are one vote short of having a 2/3 majority, we're about, maybe not as low as we can go, but man, if we go any lower, we're not going to be relevant. And I don't see the point in having a political party that's not interested in winning elections and helping its candidates win. And let's trust the people in each of those legislative districts and counties voting for county commissioner. Let's trust them to select the Republican candidate that best fits their community. And then let's, as a party, let's get behind them, whether it's exactly my flavor of Republican or not.
Yeah, I'm talking to Mark Hillman, former state treasurer. Look, the two most influential books in my life, the Holy Bible, and then How to Win Friends and Influence People. I think we've lost that second book a lot, especially in politics, that we win people over to our side instead of pushing them out. And the people, the most people on the bus, or the party with the most people on the bus, is the most successful. And look, the approach I've always had on this, Mark, is a vast majority of the people in my life, and this is my nature, just being a coalitions guy. This is what I started in politics, being a coalitions worker for different campaigns. Vast majority of people in my life are not into politics. And so when somebody comes along and shows interest and wants to get involved, I'm just so appreciative that they're even at all interested in it. And I'm not looking at maybe the 20% I disagree. I'm looking at the 80% we agree on and going, I'm sure glad you're here. And I consider you an 80% friend, not a 20% enemy.
And those are people whose votes are gettable. The folks who are not political geeks like you and I are the ones who tend to make their decision on election day or coming into election day based upon, do I feel like the economy is getting better for me? Do I feel like there's hope by continuing down the same path of the current president, or do we need to do something different? And do I feel like a political party cares about me, or is purely buried in fostering purely its own agenda and doesn't want to talk at all about what's important to me? And I think as Republicans in Colorado, we've got to learn to listen to those people whose votes we need.
Now, that's interesting. Mark Hillman, former Colorado State Treasurer and Senate Majority Leader, joining Jeff and Bill live, talking about how this is not your father's Colorado. If you've been here for more than 4 decades, the dramatic change you've seen politically in the Colorado landscape is incredible. Now, what I want to talk to you about, Mark, is you're talking about the idea of allowing the Republican Party to listen to more voices. How do we square that circle with the push to alienate unaffiliated voters out of the primary system. The Colorado Republican Party says that this is a purity test, that if you're not part of the group, you can't help them select their primary candidates, because it should be about who's pure enough. And on another note, we have organizations that constantly call out current Colorado Republicans and label them as rhinos and try to push them out of the party. How do we get around squaring that circle for the Colorado GOP?
Yeah, that last point I think is the first and biggest root of the problem. When you're more concerned about driving people out of your party, then you're clearly not going to be reaching outside the tent, because you keep trying to make the tent smaller and smaller. And I honestly, other than for folks who use it as a grift machine to send out fundraising emails and letters, to spend it to help their own friends, but not to advance party politics, I don't get why that's ever a winning equation. The fundamental job of a political party is to win elections and to build majorities and to grow your numbers in the legislature, in local office. And right now, the leadership of our state Republican Party seems more intent on driving insufficiently pure Republicans out, and not even just out of leadership, but I mean, I've been to the last two state conventions, and honestly, I used to have a great time going to state Republican conventions. I have no desire to go to another state Republican convention for the simple reason that it used to be fun because you had like-minded people and there might be a crank now and then. But man, at the last two, there have been people who are just rude and who, I mean, if we were home, I'd take you outside and we'd have a little conversation about manners and treating other Republicans that way. Talk about Jeff mentioned how to win friends and influence people. Boy, our current leadership in the Republican Party just doesn't get it. And I think you're right. The leadership in the legislature is the one that actually has to live with the outcome of elections. And so they're the ones that are trying to broaden the tent and bring new voters in because they've got to live with the results. Our state party doesn't seem to be too interested in that because they can spend the rest of an election cycle demagoguing both Democrats and Republicans.
Now, talking with Mark Hillman, former state treasurer, he wrote a piece called "This Ain't Your Father's Colorado" at markhillman.com. I guess, look, I move in between all these different groups, including the more right-wing, hard R conservatives. What I found about them is that their primary motivation is making sure that Republicans live up to Republican principles. And when they challenge somebody, what I've found is that they're just looking for a conversation. Oftentimes they'll say, they'll get a call back from a county commissioner or state lawmaker and go, look, I see your critique. Can we sit down and talk through what I'm working at, that type of thing? But oftentimes these sides line up and then kind of shoot back and forth. Well, you're too conservative. You're not going to win, or I'm not conservative enough. So I guess from my perspective, my question to you, Mark, is do you see some of those conservative groups as just trying to maintain and keep people committed to what should be conservative principles, Republican principles?
I think we have to take that one step at a time because ever since 2004, to be honest, because prior to 2004 was the last time that Republicans had a majority in both houses of the legislature and a Republican governor. That's the last time that being a pure Republican really mattered in our ability to pass bills. All these candidates who get out and brag about their ultra-conservative voting record, and I think I'm as conservative as any of them, what they're talking about are votes that were all cast on the losing side because we have been so much in a minority that, yeah, you got a perfectly pure record, but you haven't made me any more free as a Coloradan because you've lost what it takes to figure out how to win the majority and then, first of all, be able to block bad bills and secondly, be able to pass good bills. So there are certainly those people who disagree with how a lawmaker votes and they simply want to hear them out. And I appreciate those people. I always said, you don't have to agree with me all the time, but I want you to know where I'm coming from. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I'd like to know where you're coming from as well. But there are also people who think that they can show up to a town hall and just, yell and shout and threaten and beat somebody into submission. I can't recall if it was John Adams or George Washington or who, but they said, You're not electing me to be your delegate. That is to take a poll and vote the way my district wants on everything. You're electing me to be your representative, to study each issue and to use my best judgment to cast a vote on that issue. And when we do that, we got to give some deference to the people who are down there at the state capitol or in Congress, supposedly, if they're doing their job right, studying issues. And sometimes you have to choose between the lesser of two evils. We have to recognize that, and we have to give them at least some deference to the fact that they don't cast these votes without a fair amount of consideration, and nobody casts a vote trying to do the wrong thing.
Talking to Mark Hillman, former state treasurer. His piece, This Ain't Your Father's Colorado. You can visit and read it at markhillman.com. I'm reminded real briefly of a story. The time Bill Armstrong went to Lyman, Colorado, the farmers were so angry at him. He was a state senator, or a senator at that point, U.S. senator, that they had him hanging an effigy. And he decided to sit down, have a direct conversation with them. And the title of the article written in the Lyman Ledger about it was When a Great Man Came to Town. And he stayed till 2:30 in the morning talking, figuring it out. By the time that the meeting was done, they were all getting their picture taken with him. It takes good statesmen to work through these issues. Mark Hillman, I really appreciate your time today. Thanks so much for joining the Jeff and Bill Show.
Yeah, thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you. Have a Merry Christmas.
You too,
sir. Merry Christmas.
You can learn more about Mark Hillman at markhillman.com. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
We are Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. I'm looking at these text messages.
You didn't see the Metallica thing. Right. They did their Helping Hands annual charity concert, and it's basically Metallica's charity that they had set up, and they did an acoustic set and an electric set. And they've got pieces of it that are online. And they covered a Diamond Head song during the acoustic set. And during the electric set, they played The Unforgiven 2, which hasn't been played live since, I think, 2016. And they brought out Jeff Ament during a show, during one of the songs. And they did a redone version of Fuel, a rearrangement of it. That was really cool. So again, Metallica fans, go check it out. It's absolutely incredible.
We've been all over the place today,
we
from school shootings to bounties for illegal immigrants to lesbian WNBA players to transgender lawsuits. Now Mark Hillman and the future of the Republican Party and why it's not your father's color.
And Metallica.
To Metallica.
Yes, we hit it all.
8422 did great. You texted a very good. Your show is great and very informative. It's just one extreme to the other with you guys sometimes.
Absolutely.
8422. Thank you. And by the way, the debates on the text message lines. Holy cow.
Wonderful.
That's going crazy. All right. Want to talk to you about my friends over at QC Kinetics. We'll get to that in a second. But first, you're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. If you missed any of it, go to 710knus.com to download the podcast there. I want to talk to you about my friends over at QC Kinetics. Look, if you're dealing with pain, shoulder pain, back pain, maybe you're losing sleep because your knees and hips, let's start 2025 off the right way. With QC Kinetics, Joel in our office uses them. So they draw out a little bit of blood, get the plasma, and then they put that healing plasma back into your joints. And guess what? It reduces your need for surgery, drugs, anything like that. Absolutely awesome. You got to check out QC Kinetics, 303-900-8986, 303-900-8986, and 303-900-8986 with locations in Aurora, Superior, Highlands Ranch, and the Springs. All right, Billy, what a show.
Yeah, this was so much fun.
This is why we're totally unique.
Yeah, this is chaos. It's so much fun. And appreciate everybody's responses, text messages, calls. We love you guys.
It is. You all make it great. Thank you for listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
We are Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.